Now we're ready. Okay. All right, we want to welcome everybody to the May 2nd, actually the first budget review hearing of the mayor's recommended FY18 budget. And we're gonna operate the exact same way we have the last several years. We'll get updates on certain departments, and any of the department heads that want to appear before the Budget Review Committee are certainly encouraged to do so, but this is reserved for council members and for department heads to focus strictly on the recommended budget. And that's what we're going to try to stick to today. We will not vote on anything today. Anything that a council member or a member of this committee wishes to place into consideration, whether it's an addition or a deletion, and by the way, if it is an addition, there probably needs to be a deletion. But we'll put it in a parking lot, so to speak, and we'll address it at in the final meeting, where we'll review the items that have been placed on the add or delete list and make decisions at that time. It's a very lean budget, Mayor, and the staff have done I think a very good job just based on a 30,000-foot view of it. There wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room, so I think this group needs to be prepared to offer up offsetting cuts if there's any additional expenditures being made. So with that in mind, I'm not sure, this is not popping up, so can we turn Angelica's mic on? There we go.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As the budget chair has stated, this is the first of a series of meetings that we'll have in regards to the FY18 budget. The agenda for today is the FY18 budget overview. The next item on the agenda is our benefits consultant, Shaw Hankins. They will provide us with a healthcare update. Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge will provide us with the transportation projects update. And the only department presentation we have on the schedule today is for the Marshal's office.
Okay.
So just getting into the FY18 recommended budget overview. Just the agenda, what we'll cover today as far as the overview is the budget process and the schedule, a listing of the operating funds, a summary listing of the operating funds, any agency appropriations, our non-operating summary, our other local option sales tax summary, our transportation special purpose local option sales tax summary, a healthcare update, and then again, any department presentations, which slated for today is only to be presented by the Muscogee County Marshal's Office. So as it relates to the budget process, the budget has to be submitted to council by the mayor no later than 60 days prior to the start of each fiscal year. This includes operating and capital expenditures and any accompanying revenues. The recommended budget itself shall be accompanied by a budget message from the mayor, which contains any policy, any major changes, a general summary, and other information that's deemed appropriate. We advertise in the newspaper for our public hearings so that the public can make public comment, and this is done in the month of June. The budget and millage ordinances related to the adoption of the budget must be approved by the 1st of July. So the schedule, just to restate, we're in our budget review sessions. Today is the 1st, it's May 2nd, and we'll go over our operating funds, our agency appropriations, non-operating funds, OLOS, T-SPLOS, and on the 19th and the 16th, we are very heavily focused on department in office presentations, and the 23rd of May is reserved exclusively for the add delete list, in which any additions or deletions made to the mayor's proposed budget, council will have to take a vote on. And as I stated just a second ago, in June, we published notices in the newspaper for public comment. We advertise the public hearings as required by state law for the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And then there is the first and second reading of the budget and millage ordinances. So just in totality here, the FY18 operating funds has a proposed revenue of $267,657,013. Expenditures are proposed as $267,693,455, with the use of fund balance in the amount of $36,442, and this is exclusively in the Trade Center Fund. So there is no use of fund balance in the general fund. Some of the FY18 assumptions, there is a slight decrease in the millage rates from FY17. The Urban Service District number 1, the millage rate is 17.78 mills.
I hate to interrupt you, and I guess my first question to you is, do you want me to interrupt you with questions as you go along, or to hold them till the end?
Is that your discretion?
Well, would you go back to the operating fund?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you go into a little more explanation about the use of fund balance?
Well, the use of fund balance is in the Trade Center Fund. Presently, the revenues that are projected for FY18 are slightly lower than the expenditures that they have, and we'll actually, as we get further in the presentation, we'll go into the summary for the Trade Center Fund if you want to wait until.
Does this mean that you are that the only place that we are using any of our fund balance is in the Trade Center? It's not.
That's correct. The only use of fund balance is in the Trade Center Fund.
And this is not out of the general fund balance.
No, it's not general fund, it's the Trade Center Fund balance.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that I've got all of that
Yes, ma'am.
as straight as I can get it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So there is a slight decrease in the millage from FY17, Urban Service District 1. The proposed millage is 17.78 mills. In Urban Service District number 2, it's 11.80 mills. And Urban Service District number 4 is 10.90 mills. We are projecting a 2.4% increase in the tax digest, and that's at a 96% collection rate. Within this FY18 budget, there's no subsidy to the Integrated Waste Fund, the Civic Center Fund, or the Parking Management Fund from the general fund. Other assumptions, there is included in the FY18 budget subsidies to E911 and the golf courses. The value of 1 mill as it relates to operating is $4,896,364. The value of 1 mill for debt is $5,291,243. Included in this recommended budget is a COLA of 0.5% for active employees and 0.25% for retirees. Both are effective January of 2018. There's also included in the recommended budget a 20-hour bonus for active full-time employees. This excludes elected officials. And this bonus will be distributed in August of 2017. Attached to your presentations, I provided the memorandum that went out to all employees regarding the bonus. And just to provide more information as far as the bonus is concerned, it is 20 hours for weekly hourly employees. I guess you could see it that way. From a biweekly standpoint, which more than, I would say about half of the employees are biweekly salaried employees, it equates to being 1/4 or a quarter of your regular biweekly salary. So it amounts to being the same thing, it's just worded a little differently. As it relates to the millage, here's a summary of the millage that we're proposing for FY18. In Urban Service District 1, 8.18 mills for the total general and urban area for Metra is 0.82 meals, and that is subject to the 9-meal cap. 1.24 meals for stormwater in Urban Service District 1, 3.44 meals for paving, the medical center at 3 meals, 0.50 meals for economic development, and 0.60 meals for debt service. And that's actually the part of the millage rate that went down. It was the debt service millage. For FY17, the debt service millage was 0.70. So for FY18, we're proposing 0.60 meals for debt service. So here's an overview for the operating budget for FY18. As you can see, the general fund represents over 55% of our overall operating budget. The OLOS is second at 12.60%, while the paving and medical center funds rounds out the top three at 6% and 5.5% respectively. For the FY18 revenues that we're projecting, this chart just depicts our revenue source by type. As noted here, most of our revenue is derived from general property taxes at 31.3%, and sales taxes being the second largest source of revenue at 26.4%. For FY18 expenditures, this chart just shows the expenditures by function. As shown here, public safety represents 38.6% of operating expenditures, while public works is the second largest category at 10.8%. This chart just shows the operating budget by type. Majority of our operating budget is personal services, and that number for FY18 recommended budget rounds out at 56%, 39.3% for operating, 1.7% for capital, 0.5% for COLAs and pay adjustments, and CIP at 2.5%. So more specifically into the operating funds, we have the general fund here. The general fund is balanced at $147,636,427. There is no use of general fund reserves to balance the general fund. This is the second year in a row that we've been able to do this. The general fund accounts for normal day-to-day activities such as police, fire, public works, parks and recreation, and et cetera. And it's primarily funded, as we've seen before, by sales taxes, property taxes, and franchise fees. So some of the fee increases that are included in the recommended budget for FY18, for the fire and EMS, there's an increase to the emergency ambulance service fees. These fees are increasing by $200 for advanced life support and basic life support services. Presently, advanced life support is $700 and basic life support is $500. So we're increasing to $700 and $900 for those two. Also included in the recommended budget is a $6 per child fee increase for after-school program fees. And Parks and Recreation and Fire and EMS are on the schedule. Attached to your presentations, I've attached the schedule as of about 1 o'clock today as far as the departments who are on schedule to come before council and make presentations. So Fire and EMS will be here at a later date, as well as Parks and Recreations, to discuss their budget and these proposed fee increases. As far as the business license fees for the finance department, those license fees are presently $50. We're proposing to increase the business license fees to $75, which is still below or at the same level that other municipalities are charging. I know as far as some of our neighboring counties, Phoenix City charges $100, Harris County charges $75, and so we're just, like I said, still below or at the same level as other local governments. The special permit fees is a new fee that's been incorporated into the FY18 budget. This is an administrative, there's a lot of administrative oversight that's required to issue special event permits. And so because there's a significant amount of time by multiple departments to issue these types of permits, we are incorporating into the budget a $25 administrative fee to help offset some of these associated administrative costs. In the general fund, as it relates to personnel, there are 2 new positions that are being proposed in the district attorney's office. One is an assistant district attorney for Recorder's Court, and also an investigator for Recorder's Court. There are also several budget-neutral reclassifications included within the recommended budget. Listing here in Parks and Recreation, there's a park maintenance supervisor being reclassified to a parks manager. In Parks and Recreation also, there's a community schools district supervisor being reclassified to a recreation program specialist 3. In elections, and what I don't have on the slide here is most of the election reclassifications are pending UGA approval. But here are the recommended reclassifications for elections. They're reclassifying an elections tech G9 to an election tech G12, so it's the same position title, just reclassifying the grade from a 9 to a 12. The same is for the 2 election techs who are G10s, reclassifying those to G13s. There's an election specialist, G10, that's being reclassified to an elections tech of G13. And then there's a registration coordinator, which is presently a G15, that the director is requesting reclassification to an assistant director for elections. Also, as far as the reclassifications are concerned, in the clerk of municipal court, there's a deputy clerk 2, which is a G12, which is being reclassified to a senior deputy clerk G14. And in the city manager's office, the citizen service center tech being reclassified to a communications and multimedia specialist G14. Also, in elections, there are some pay adjustments for the board members. I believe this is the only board that actually receives compensation from the city. The board members and the board chair. The board members during elections is requesting that we increase the biweekly pay of the board members by $25 and $30 for the board chair. And this is biweekly, so it's every 2 weeks. To offset these adjustments that elections is requesting, they are electing to delete elections tech 2 position that they currently have vacant in the budget. So as it relates to the general fund reserve or fund balance, we are projecting that we'll end FY17 at 60.20 days. And so our FY18 projections, based on the revenues that we expect and the expenditures that we've budgeted, we expect to end with 61.45 days of fund balance reserve. So with the stormwater fund, that fund is balanced at $5,626,935. The stormwater fund accounts for activities restricted for stormwater and drainage, and it's primarily funded from property taxes. The millage rate remains the same in the for stormwater at 1.24 for urban service district number 1 and 0.20 for urban service district number 2. Capital in the stormwater fund equates to $557,727. Out of that figure, $2,920 is for engineering and $554,807 is for public works. Also included in the stormwater fund is CIP, a CIP transfer of $1,087,642. So with the paving fund is balanced at $16,036,247. The paving fund accounts for maintenance and improvements to roads and bridges, and it is also primarily funded by property taxes. The millage for paving also remains the same in Urban Service District number 1 at 3.44 mills and in 0.55 mills in Urban Service District number 2. There are no personnel adjustments in the paving fund. Capital in the paving fund equates to roughly $1.4 million, with $88,000 of that being for our engineering department and $1.3 million of that being for our public works. Also in the paving fund, there is a CIP, which equates to $1,525,596. The medical center fund here, 3 mills is projected at $14,101,529. The proposed budget is slightly more than that because that includes a $600,000 transfer from the general fund, which is for excess inmate medical expenditures. And the medical center fund accounts for funding indigent hospital care, and it's funded exclusively with property taxes and that transfer from the general fund. The integrated waste fund is balanced at $12,602,000. Integrated waste accounts for refuse collection and disposal, recycling, and landfill operations. The residential rate remains the same at $17 a month. Also within the integrated waste fund, there's a debt service payment for capital lease that was approved in FY17 for 29 garbage trucks, 2 grab balls, and 1 bulldozer that's housed at the landfill. Also in the integrated waste fund, there's capital that equates to $680,000 approximately. The E911 fund is balanced at $3,942,620. That does include a subsidy from the public safety OLOS of $995,620. E911 accounts for the telephone subscriber surcharges and collection for emergency dispatch, and this is primarily funded with the fees we receive for landline, wireless, and prepaid phone charges. The Economic Development Fund has a budget of $2,350,255. This is, there's 0.50 mills that accounts for economic development, and this is used for attracting quality companies, broadening the tax base, job creation, and retention. Out of the 0.50 mills, 0.25 mills is allocated to the Development Authority. That amounts to $1,175,128. We're also in year 3 of a 10-year commitment for NCR and the Blue Cross Blue Shield project. And there's a reserve that we're setting aside in the Economic Development Fund of $375,127. And that is to be used at council's discretion. And the Debt Service Fund, that's balanced at $13,485,730. The debt service accounts for the accumulation and disbursement of principal and interest payments. Again, the millage rate for debt service slightly decreases in FY18 to 0.60 mills, and that's down 0.10 mills from FY17. The Metro Fund is balanced at $7,767,548. Metro accounts for the operations of the public transportation system. It is primarily funded from property taxes, federal and state grants, service charges, and T-SPLOS. Also within the Metro Fund, there is one personnel adjustment for that's T-SPLOS funded, and that is for a correctional officer. Also included in the Metro Fund is capital outlay in the amount of $778,150. The Parking Management Fund is balanced at $321,779, and this is balanced with no subsidy from the general fund. The parking fees were increased in FY17 to $40. There are no parking fee increases included in the FY18 budget, and the parking fund accounts for the operation of the public parking and parking garages, and it's primarily funded by parking fees. So the Trade Center Fund is balanced with the use of fund balance. We have revenues projected at $2,902,481. Expenditures included in the budget is $2,938,923, which requires a use of Trade Center Fund balance in the amount of $36,442. The Trade Center Fund accounts for the operation of the facility, and it's primarily funded from event proceeds, beer tax included in the FY18 budget of $731,000, and the hotel motel tax of $610,000. There are some personnel adjustments in the Trade Center Fund. The Trade Center is requesting 2 new part-time event attendants and 1 part-time facilities maintenance worker 1. There's also a reclassification of an accounting technician, G12, to an office manager, G14, and total capital outlay of $71,640. For the golf courses, Bull Creek is requiring a subsidy from the general fund in the amount of $50,000. The budget for Bull Creek golf courses for FY18 is $1,237,350. Oxbow Creek, that operating budget for FY18 is $385,000, and it only requires a $150,000 subsidy from the general fund, which is a reduction from FY17's subsidy of $250,000 the FY17's general fund subsidy was $250,000, so there's a $100,000 reduction in the subsidy to Oxbow Creek for FY18. There was a debt service, the debt service payments for Oxbow Creek ended in FY17, so it didn't require as much of a subsidy. The Civic Center Fund is balanced at $4.9 million. The Civic Center Fund accounts for the operations of the facility, and it is primarily funded from event proceeds. It also receives $1.22 million in hotel motel tax. There is one personnel adjustment that's a reclassification for an events coordinator, G15, to event services manager, G17, and it also requires no general fund subsidy in FY18. The healthcare fund, the FY18 budget is $23,647,283. We do continue the 70-30 contribution strategy for our active employees. There are no premium increases for 2018 for the health insurance cost to employees. And Shaw Hankins, again, is here to provide us with the healthcare update to sort of talk about some of the things that are included in the budget for FY18 in order for us to arrive to this number and no premium increases to employees. The Risk Management Fund's budget is $4,754,474. And the Risk Management Fund accounts for general liability, vehicle claims, and workers' compensation. The CDBG Fund has a budget of $1,650,315. CDBG Fund accounts for grant monies that we receive from the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Community Development Block Grant Program. And that program was funded by the federal government for FY18.
Councilor Davis. Okay. Continue.
So regarding our agency appropriations for FY18, minimal changes here. The only changes to note as far as the differences between FY17 and FY18 is the payment that we're required to make to the River Valley Regional Commission. That allocation for FY18 is $200,579. There's no change to New Horizons or Health Department services. The rent that we are required to pay for the Health Department did increase slightly to $327,560. There's no change to the Department of Children and Family Services. That remains at $41,500. Our required contribution to the airport is $40,000, and there is no appropriation to Uptown Columbus in the FY18 recommended budget. So our non-operating funds, these funds are not for the general operations of the government. They are restricted for a specific purpose and must be budgeted annually, and each maintained in its own separate fund. So for the Urban Development Action Grant, that budget for FY18 is $15,000. For the Economic Development Program, the budget is $200,000. For the Home Program, the budget is $798,143. The budget for the multi-governmental grants is $3,127,537. The Hotel Motel Tax Fund is $4,880,000. The Police Forfeiture Fund, we are adopting the budget of $200,000. $68,000 for the DATE Fund, or also known as the County Drug Abuse Treatment Fund. For the Metro Drug Task Force Fund, the budget is $150,000. For the County Penalty and Assessment Fund, the budget is $1 million. The Sheriff's Forfeiture Fund is $10,000 for FY18. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program, we're budgeting monies of $1,082,678. The Marshals Forfeiture Fund, there's no amount listed. We're not adopting a budget for the Marshals Forfeiture Fund. The Capital Projects Fund is $23,863,238. For the Transportation SPLOS Fund, the budget is $73,500,000. For the 1999 SPLOS, we're appropriating $12,700,000. The Lease Purchase Program, we're appropriating $496,000. For the Columbus Building Authority Lease Revenue Bonds 2003 Series A, we're appropriating $600,000. For the Building Authority Lease Revenue Bonds of 2003 B, $4.2 million. For the Columbus Building Authority Lease Revenue Bonds Series 2010 B is $4 million. And for the Columbus Building Authority Lease Revenue Bond Series 2010 C, $40,000. And also in our non-operating funds, our Family and Youth Coalition Fund, the appropriations for FY18 is $47,000. So the other local option sales tax fund is balanced at $33,666,700. $667. The other local option sales tax fund, or what we often refer to as OLOS, is a sub-fund of the general fund, and it accounts for 70% that's allocated to public safety and 30% that's allocated to infrastructure. So the other local option sales tax public safety, the current personnel that's listed in that fund, for the police department, there's 12 sergeants, 14 corporals, 84 police officers, and 9 E911 technicians. In the fire department, there's 20 firefighters. For Muskogee County Prison, there's 4 correctional officers and 1 sergeant. For the marshal's office, there's 5 marshal deputies. For the sheriff's office, there's 13 deputy officers, 2 sergeants, 9 correctional officers, and 2 lieutenants.
Excuse me, Ms. Alexander. Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Alexander, these are the positions that are authorized, not necessarily those that are filled. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Counsel.
For example, I know in the police department, there are 110 positions authorized, and I think it's like 104 of them, 106, something like that.
That's actually
filled at this time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Also in the local option sales tax fund for public safety, there's a crime position director, one crime position director, crime prevention director. In the Solicitor General's office, there are 2 assistant Solicitor Generals and 1 deputy clerk. The district attorney has 2 assistant district attorneys. Recorder's Court has 2 judicial admin technicians. Municipal court clerk has 1 senior deputy clerk and 1 deputy clerk 2 in the other local option sales tax fund. Probate court has 1 deputy clerk that's funded in the other local option sales tax fund. The annual supplement for sworn public safety officers remains at $3,121. And this supplement excludes elected officials. So the additions to the other local option sales tax fund for public safety, what's new in FY18 is 1 deputy clerk, 2 position for the Superior Court clerk. Also included in the other local option sales tax fund for public safety is Sheriff Department pay reform. So we're requesting to advance and not fill 14 detention positions, and that amounts to $559,867. The subsidy to the E911 fund, again, is at $955,620. We are in year 4 out of 5 for the E911 system upgrade, which amounts to $352,478. We're in year 3 of 10 for the 800 megahertz radio system upgrade, and that amounts, the public safety portion amounts to $842,490. We're in year 2 of 9 for the warning siren maintenance. That's also a part of the radio system upgrade, and that amounts to $104,376. Included in the budget for FY18 is $750,000 for crime prevention grants, and there's a reserve that's placed in the other local option sales tax public safety side of $375,034. So also included in the OLOS public safety is a transfer to CIP for the court management system of $250,000. So the transfer to debt service from the OLOS public safety side is $1,081,998. The Columbus Building Authority 2010 Series A bonds represents about $57,000 of that. The The Series B bonds represents about $62,000 of that. And then the remaining portion of the debt service payment from the OLOS public safety side is for GMA leases related to the fire department. GMA lease number 4, in the amount of $51,842 for one truck. This was approved in FY16. GMA lease number 5, in the amount of $178,753 for 4 ambulances, also approved in FY16. GMA lease number 9 is $338,306 for 5 fire trucks that were approved in FY17. Number 10 is lease payment amount of $276,843 for 4 fire trucks. And it says refinance number 6. There was, I won't say an issue, but the interest rate that we received, we actually refinanced to receive a better interest rate. It was a lease that was originally approved in FY16, and we refinanced it in FY17, and that is the amount of the annual debt service payment. Lease number 11 is for 2 ambulances, also approved in FY17, and that amounts to $115,981. There's capital outlay approved in the, recommended in the FY18 budget of $1,075,404. The police, this equates to 8 pursuit vehicles with technology packages in the amount of $425,552. For the fire department, their allocation is $156,000. This is for 65 protective clothing. For MCP, their allocation is $74,802. This is for a freezer cooler replacement at the prison. The Marshals Department allocation is $2,200, and this is for a license plate reader renewal that was requested by the Marshal's office. The Sheriff's allocation is $416,850, and the capital outlay for the Sheriff's Department is to be prioritized by the Sheriff, so there's no listing of specific items. As it relates to the OLOS infrastructure, included in the recommended budget is $1.4 million for bridges and roads. There's $400,000 recommended for flood abatement and stormwater improvements. Technology improvements of $1,115,321. $206,254 of that is for the core switch. $250,000 for computer equipment, and we are in year 3 of 4 for the finance HR system upgrade. So 1 more year of allocated funding for that. For facility improvements, $376,967. The Cooper Creek expansion, which is based on an MOU with Quarter and CSU, we are in year 3 of a 3-year commitment of $500,000, so that goes away in FY19. Debt service in the amount of $6,008,272 for the CBA 2010 Series A bonds, that equates to being about $2.5 million. For the CBA 2010 Series B bonds, that equates to being about $2.7 million. And for the CBA 2010 Series C bonds, $73,089. Also included in the OLOS infrastructure are 2 GMA leases. The first one is for the tax assessor software upgrade of $585,008, and the computer equipment that's related to that upgrade of $44,009. We're also in year 3 of the 800 megahertz radio system upgrade that's funded from the OLOS infrastructure side, and that amounts to being $260,480. Out of the 73,500,000 that we're requesting for the T-SPLOS, the FY18 discretionary funding part of that amount is 2.5 million. And I've listed provided a listing of the current discretionary projects that have been approved, with the Boxwood Bridge Boulevard replacement of 680,000, the Victory Drive improvements of 575,000, resurfacing budget of 1.5 million, the Salmon Road signal of 250,000, Linwood and 6th Avenue Bridge of 500,000, the Benning Drive Bridge of $1 million, Double Churches Park parking of 200,000. We have 200,000 approved T-SPLOS funding for traffic calming. The Reese Road Bridge at Cooper Creek at $1,680,000. Clarendon Bridge at $300,000. The Martin Luther King Trail at $700,000. There's $100,000 of approved T-SPLOS funding for sidewalks and ADA improvements, and $100,000 approved for guardrails. And that concludes the FY18 overview, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
Would you mind running through all that again, please? No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
I bet you'd answer. Counselor Garrett.
You'll have to excuse me because this is the first one I've gone through, so we may be addressing this with department heads, but I did have some concerns about the marshal's capital outlay. I was wondering, I had two questions about it. He had 3 employee requests. Are those OLOS funded that he requested?
Yes.
They are? Okay.
I'm sorry, wait. Are you asking if he requested those to be funded from the OLOS?
Or if those are or can be funded through OLOS.
Well, I mean, if council can reallocate or distribute OLOS funding how you see fit. I mean, out of the 3 things that were requested by the marshal's office, what's included in the budget is the $2,200 for the license plate renewal software.
Okay, and I think there might have been a mix-up with maybe the forms because he had turned in the vehicle request form, and it looked like there were at least 7 vehicles that were over the mileage count and over the years limitations for what we normally do for vehicle turn-ins, but I guess we might address that more with his presentation today, but.
I'm not exactly sure if he'll address that in his presentation, but there are 2 forms that we require for capital outlay. There's one capital outlay form that ranks the capital outlay that's being requested. So we request that departments, if they were requesting a vehicle, that they list that on the capital outlay form, and then they rank those requests. In addition to the capital outlay form that has the rankings, if you're requesting vehicles on that ranked capital outlay form, we ask that you complete a capital outlay vehicle turn-in form. Mm-hmm. That's really more so for informational purposes, so that we know and so that we can also provide it to our fleet management what vehicles will be turned in from what you're requesting.
Sure. Okay, I guess we'll address that more with his presentation later, but.
Yes.
All right. Councilor Thomas?
I have a couple of questions for Ms. Alexander, and then a couple for us on procedure. One of the questions I have been asked that I did not know the answer to was, why was the pay period changed for those employees? The ones that were most concerned about it are the ones who are currently paid weekly and now will go to a bi-weekly. They were concerned about why was that change proposed?
Well, I have mentioned on several occasions in several department head meetings, and I believe also I've made mention to council, we did upgrade our finance system. That was phase 1 of a 3-part project. In addition to the finance system upgrade, we also upgraded our budgeting system. That was part 2 of the project. Those two parts of the project have been completed. The third part of the project is an upgrade to our HR system. Currently, we are on a antiquated mainframe system. We are migrating off of the mainframe onto this new web cloud-based platform, which means because it's cloud-based and it's a hosted solution, we are no longer in charge of processing our nightly cycles, which includes payroll. So we won't physically run payroll here in Columbus. It'll be ran off-site by the vendor that we've upgraded our systems with. And so part of that financial system upgrade, like I said, includes the HR piece. And so because of that, we'd like to reduce the number of pay periods that we're processing because it's no longer being done by us in Columbus. It's being done by this vendor. And so it'll make, it's really industry standards for us to all really sort of be on one pay cycle as opposed to there being several different pay cycles. So that's why we're migrating the weekly employees to a biweekly pay system. That's part of the reason why we're migrating the weekly employees to a biweekly pay system, is to reduce the number of pay cycles that we're running because it's being done now off-site.
So generally, it's because of some technology pieces. And then the other part of that is the bonus that's designed to help folks get through that change. Isn't that what I recall you saying?
Yes, ma'am. Included in the recommended budget is a bonus, a 20-hour bonus for all active full-time weekly employees. And like I said, from a biweekly standpoint, it sounds kind of weird because we're not paid on an hourly basis like the weekly employees are. So that equates to us biweekly folks as being a 25% pay bonus or 1/4 of your regular biweekly pay in the form of a bonus, which really is a bonus. Because all employees will still be compensated for the time that they've worked. It's just that in order for biweekly employees, we're paid up through the current paycheck date. So we received a paycheck on Friday, April the 21st, and that paid us biweekly folks up through April the 21st. So we run payroll on Tuesdays. So we're assuming on Tuesday that you'll be here Friday at 5 p.m.
That's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
So in addition to converting the weekly employees to a biweekly pay cycle, the weekly employees are presently on a lag, which means they have 1 week in arrears. So they worked for the city 1 week and didn't receive a paycheck until the next week. Well, it's presently not that way for the biweekly employees, and so we are also creating that week lag for the biweekly employees.
Do you have any thought about how many are biweekly and how many are weekly employees? Do you have any percentage? Are most of our employees paid biweekly, you think?
I think it was about,
Yeah.
Rita might be the better person.
And while she's coming, Councilor Thomas, I wanted her to make the point that she just made. I wanted to be clear that our current system, today is Tuesday. If we are going to pay people Friday, and I'm here Tuesday, and the payroll goes in, the assumption is that I'm going to work Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So if something happens with me that I can't come to work the rest of the week, I got paid for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, although I did not work. And so then we, at the next pay period, play catch-up.
Have to adjust?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So most of the employees are paid biweekly. The employees that are paid weekly are typically in the Public Works Department, Parks and Rec, and Metro. Outside of those departments,
And
everybody.
are hourly employees?
Yes, hourly and paid weekly,
Okay.
but everybody else is paid biweekly.
Okay. Thank you. Then the other question that I had for Ms. Alexander is on the the T-SPLOS, the Metra correctional officer, we are into the third year of T-SPLOS, fourth year of T-SPLOS. Third or fourth year, right? At any rate, is the thought that this person will only be hired while we are collecting T-SPLOS money? Or at the end of the collection of T-SPLOS, is the thought that he or she will be converted to a general fund employee?
Well, I think the thought, and you can most certainly speak more so because it sort of predates me, but I think the intent and the thought behind the people that are hired for the T-SPLOS is that once the T-SPLOS ends, unless we find funding, then their positions with the city would end at that time. Is that not?
Well, the way, that's essentially, that's correct. And what I've made clear to staff with the $22.4 million T-SPLOS monies to expand routes, hire additional operators and support staff and so forth. We've tried to schedule that funding, that money will last, I've said 20 years. And when that money is no longer there to support the expansion, and it's obviously we're not going to make money in public transit. No one in the country makes money in public transit. The best one would expect is a 35% fare box recovery. But this government will not be able to sustain any expansion or increase in personnel beyond the level prior to the T-SPLOS funds. And so we fully expect that if something miraculous does not happen, that an adjustment downward will need to be made. And as we go through this process, if we see that routes are not productive, that they make sense to continue them, then we're going to start reducing or eliminating routes based on level or lack of productivity. So the short answer is that if there's not another source of funding, in other words, T-SPLOS continues, then we will not be able to sustain and continue forward with that service beyond the exhaustion of the T-SPLOS revenues.
I don't think that you folks are going to do this, but I just want to be clear that and make sure and draw attention to, I guess, if you will, the fact that if we start off by paying for this out of T-SPLOS, when T-SPLOS is gone, then we're going to need to make a decision, and that decision may well be that we convert this position to general fund, or it may well be that we don't have any money and that person or that position
Absolutely.
Goes away.
Absolutely.
Is that?
And I've made that absolutely clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The other, the last one for you, Ms. Alexander, is on the non-operating funds, the 1999 SPLOST money is $12.7 million. The 99 SPLOST is over and done with. Would you do an explanation of, are we receiving $12.7 million a year T-SPLOST, or give me a little more on that?
No, ma'am, we're not receiving, well, I won't say we're not receiving any monies. We're receiving very little. There are apparently people that are still paying 1999 SPLOST. We do receive a small allocation of that on a monthly basis from the state. We have no idea who's paying those funds. But no, we're not receiving $12.7 million in 1999 SPLOST funding. This is money that we're allocating or appropriating in the FY18 budget for the projects, or the funding that we still have, for projects that we still have to complete that were originally funded from the 1999 SPLOST.
Okay.
Of that would be the Greenway Trail, where we're connecting from 10th to the 14th Street pedestrian plaza. We had not completed that portion, and monies were still in that account, and so we're using those dollars to complete that 1.4 miles or whatever it is from 10th Avenue near the Medical Center up by Linwood to the Frank K. Martin pedestrian bridge.
And some of those T-SPLOST projects that you listed under the discretionary funding are multi-year projects,
That's correct.
yeah, okay. And then, Mr. Budget Chair, I did want to know about how we will look at or deal with those personnel actions for those departments that are not scheduled to make a presentation to us. For example, at this point, the Civic Center, there was a couple of positions on the Civic Center. At this point, they're not on our agenda for them to come before us. So how,
You can bring it up for discussion really at any time. I mean, if they're not scheduled to appear, then we can go ahead. If there's something that you'd like to see put on the add or delete list, or even just put on there just for the purpose of discussion so that we can get more information, you can do that at any time.
well, I don't know if I want to add or delete them because all I know is this one,
Well, I can-
piece.
Well-
And so that's what I was trying to find out. And I don't want to single out the
No,
Civic Center. That was just one that I noticed.
actually,
Well,
there's a couple, and I think it'd be a
Yeah.
good idea, even if you're not sure that you want to pursue it, just because we place something on there, you may decide to retract it. But if you want something put on there for the purpose of discussion, that way at least there'll be a record of it.
And we can require that departments come and make a presentation to council. I mean, if you
Well,
like.
I
if
don't know
there's a
that
specific-
I want to do that. It may or may not be, if there's someone else that can tell us,
Yes.
Well,
adding personnel or reclassifying personnel, to me, is a serious issue. And I don't want to just do it, particularly if there's some questions about how this would work. So,
so what
Well,
I could,
let me just say, when we are scheduled to talk about reclassifications, we'll make sure that if a department head has a reclass in the proposed budget, then we'll make sure that they are here in the audience, and if it comes up, then they can address it.
in case of questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because if we're scheduled to discuss reclasses if you want to discuss reclasses at a particular session, then we can make sure they're here.
right. No,
And if there's a question,
Maybe that would be the way to do it, is to, let's say, on the 16th,
Okay.
we're going to talk about reclass, and if you've got one, be here.
yes.
I noticed, for example, there are a number in the elections department, and there may be questions, and I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to ask those questions.
And most of the departments that submitted reclassifications provided justification for those reclassifications in their budget requests.
But-
That is on the thumb drive that was
But
provided to council.
they may still have questions.
Right.
I think, Mr. Chairman, it would be good to maybe do them at a particular session, and then we can bring them here, and the department heads, and they'll be in the audience. You may or may not have questions, but if you do, at least they'll be here to address them.
That's fine.
And then the last one is in the OLOS with the capital to be prioritized by the sheriff. At what point will we know what that is, or will that come back to council, or?
Go ahead.
Well, let me just
This
say
is
that,
completely out of the ordinary. We don't
Yeah, well-
typically do it this way.
well, and let me just say that we'll ask the sheriff to prioritize the capital because actually when they submitted their request for capital, like most department heads or elected officials would say, it's all important to them.
Right.
And when, you know, I talked to staff and they shared that it's all important to them, then, you know, my directive was to determine what we're able to fund, and that's what we'll propose, and then let them figure it out, because obviously they're not going to can't get, we don't have the funding for all of those things that they asked for. How much was it?
Some 400,
1.7 million for the sheriff.
Yeah, 1.7 million. And so what we were able to support, and we realized that the entire list to them is important, we were able to support just over 400,000. So it was, they're not going to make us figure it out. We're going to fund what we can, and you figure it out. Because the thing is, if we say that if we cherry pick 4 out of 15 things and say that we're going to fund them, for sure, about the end of the first quarter, one of the other things that will need it, and someone will say you didn't fund it. And our position would be, you picked your own poison of the 15, you picked your 4 or 5, and we funded what you told us, not what we selected from your menu, if that makes sense. And so we can go back to them and say, you really need to prioritize of the 15 things. We don't want to do it for you. And here's what you have to do it. You have $400,000.
would you say that generally the things that were on the sheriff's 1.7 list would qualify for OLOS money?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So, and so it all comes down to, I mean, some departments, police, for example, CPD, they did prioritize.
Pursuit
Some
vehicles.
do, some don't. Don't make me do it, is the point.
Okay.
All right. And we could just plan, I know next week on the 9th, there's some time available after the 3 o'clock. We might be able to talk about some of the classifications, reclassifications, and some of those things. But yeah, I think anytime you've got a question, if it's something you really need a lot of additional, or we really need some more information on, then we can just not, you don't have to put it on the add delete list, just request that they bring us a presentation on it.
Well, it's very helpful, and I know that today is the first opportunity you've had to give us the presentations for the next several weeks, and these will change. I understand that there'll be additions and so forth, but it's helpful to know who's coming up next week so that we can look at, for example, next week is going to be Parks and Rec, so we can look at that information before we get here. So,
And I'll provide an updated list every week.
thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All reclasses have already been submitted and answered by UGA, right?
The only ones that are pending UGA approval is the ones for elections.
Okay. Do you have,
And I just want to reiterate. They are budget neutral too, so just so that those are watching.
right,
In other words, when we say budget neutral, you didn't take from your operating funds to make a position budget neutral. It had to come from salaries or other wages
Okay.
to make it budget neutral. So our wage and salaries did not go up. They remained where they were in order to make it budget neutral.
okay, thank you.
Councilor
So
Garrett?
you couldn't use fuel money, savings, or couldn't cut office supplies to adjust a position. It had to come from other salaries or wages.
Councilor Garrett?
Are the 8 pursuit vehicles with technology packages the police are getting, are those replacement vehicles, or are they in addition to the current fleet?
Those are replacement vehicles.
Replacement vehicles?
Yes.
So that's about how much that cost? I mean, those are,
Yes,
what's
that's
that, about 45, 50,000 or so?
per vehicle, yes. I mean,
Okay.
that includes the technology, the build-out
Okay.
packages.
I'm glad we have you. Okay. I'm right there with Counselor Thomas. Before we get to add to lead, I really need to kind of know what the sheriff wants, because right now, if we're going to get some vehicles for the marshal, and I do add to lead, add on those, the sheriff's budget's the only one right now that we don't know exactly what their priorities are. So, I think that's very important, because I do plan on making some adds on there, and we're going to have some deletions, obviously.
Okay.
And the OLOS public safety money, the 1.1 million is what we
It's a
have?
little bit less than one, it's $1,775,404, I believe.
Okay, and so, any movement of those dollars, you'd either have to take from CPD to do something else, or fire EMS to do something else, or sheriff to do something different. So the money would
Sure.
move up or down. You can move from one to give to the other, is the point I'm making.
Is there a way we could get some sort of fleet report where,
I actually, yes.
I mean, just for law enforcement in general, because I don't want to run into the garbage truck issue where we've got to replace a bunch, and
Absolutely.
I'd like to see, where we compare with all the marshal's got a lot of vehicles that are really old, and, how many CPD, how many, fire and safety.
Absolutely. I can provide that listing at the next meeting, and what I actually did print that out, and I have that listing for myself here. But there are over 200 public safety vehicles that are over 100,000 miles.
Okay.
It's 215 to be exact. A lot in the police department, in fire and EMS. So it's just throughout public safety where there are vehicles that have more than 100,000 miles, 215 of them to be exact.
Okay, well, that's very insightful.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have that presentation, but I think that would be helpful. I think there were, and I can't remember at the top of my head, but as you said, 215 public safety vehicles with over 100,000 miles that meet that criteria for replacement. The cost of that, of course, is millions. And I believe the police department requested 68 replacements. The sheriff's department or office, and so you might want to go through that too, whether now or whenever, but I think that you have that information and council's clearly interested in it, and I think you should present that because it's very detailed information that the fleet management officer stays on top of and then reports to Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin about the priorities, and they clip them off because there's just so many that are in excess of that city standard.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilor Baker.
Thank you. As the reclasses come up in the various departments, just, and remind us which ones of those are enterprise funds, because those funds have to pay for those reclasses themselves. They don't come out of the general fund. So some of the enterprise funds operate a little bit different. They have to support their own reclasses. There's no danger of it leaking over into the general fund unless we have to supplement for some reason, but that shouldn't be the case. So it's just always a good reminder to know which ones are funded out of enterprise and which ones might create a general fund issue.
Well, as far as the enterprise funds, there are only 2 reclassifications for enterprise funds. Excuse me. There's a trade center reclassification for the accounting technician to office manager. There's a civic center reclassification for the event services coordinator to the event services manager. And then the new position that's in the enterprise fund is the T-SPLOS funded correctional officer position. The other reclassifications that are in the general fund are the budget neutral reclassifications that the city manager spoke of. And in the other local options sales tax fund, there is that one new position for the clerk of Superior Court. So I know you just specifically said reclassifications, but I just sort of went through
That's
what I
fine.
remember.
And sometimes in those enterprise funds, a reclass will keep them from having to hire another position. They'll reclass somebody and not have to hire,
Right.
they'll consolidate or not have to hire. And sometimes it works to an advantage, but it's still nice to have them come and explain how and why that's going to work.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll carve out some time on the 9th, Mr. Budget Chair, for the reclassifications.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That'd be great. All right.
I'd like to make sure that either on the 9th or at another session, we talk about replacement vehicles. Well, so at another session, either on the 9th or one of the following sessions, we will present the vehicle replacement requests by the various agencies.
Okay. Oh, we've got one more question. Counselor Davis.
I've got a couple questions in general, and just to add or continue the conversation on vehicle replacement. It looks like there might be a lot of requests for vehicle replacement. I think somewhere when the mayor read her letter, she talked about there wasn't a lot of capital allocation to capital replacement this year. I do know that a lot of departments do, in fact, need vehicle replacements, and there's a majority, as the mayor said, that has very, very high mileage on them, and usage. If someone requests vehicle replacement, capital replacement there, I would like to see, Mr. Budget Chair, I'd like to see some kind of a letter, and that through finance, that it's confirmed and that the money goes directly towards capital replacement, in this case, vehicle allocation, where it can be tracked and filed and recorded. I think that's something that we really need to keep an eye on. If we're going to do that, especially requests from departments or elected officials when they come in, just to make sure, and that upon the request of that it's followed through finance, where it's purchased and paid for directly, versus just allocating and sending it over into a budget per se for a department. Is that possible? Can we do that?
We do track capital outlay items to be more specifically, like Councilor Thomas mentioned with the sheriff, and Councilor Garrett mentioned about the sheriff's office not having that prioritized list. For all other departments, we do not deviate from the list that's approved in the budget by council. So when a department requests to, if they have on their list approved vehicles, we make sure that they don't use that funding for anything else besides that vehicles. That's actually a listing that's kept in the purchasing department once the council adopts the budget. We provide the capital outlay listing to purchasing, and we make sure that they are buying things that are on the approved capital outlay listing. And when they make those purchases, that does have to come back still to council for final approval.
Well, good. That's reassuring, and also it's accountability, and we want to make sure from that standpoint. The other thing, last year we
Councilor Davis,
told...
before you move on, and what we might do is just in the budget ordinance as it relates to vehicles, make that note.
Okay.
Because, because it needs to apply across the board, not just for general government, non-public safety, or non-elected officials department personnel, but it needs to apply to elected officials' budgets too. And if you put it in the ordinance, then it's law, and then that's what we do.
Well, and I appreciate the comment made about the capital outlay, capital requests as being broken down, and itemized so we can see exactly what the requests are, but I really appreciate that, Mr. City Manager. Thank you for saying that.
So we'll make sure we make a note in the budget ordinance as it relates to capital purchases.
Yes.
The other thing, several months ago, we had a discussion about where we made some changes dealing with salary savings. And I think at that point, it all went into the reserve. And I believe at that point, and this is off the top of my head, but I'm thinking that we said we had 63, 64 days, maybe a little more.
It was a little bit more than 63 days that we were projecting based on where we ended FY16 and what we anticipated would be added back to the reserve from salary savings and the dismissal of the lawsuits.
And I'm not sure, but I think there might have been some requests back from departments where some of that money was allocated. Am I right? Or was it still earmarked for the reserve and placed in reserve?
Well, after you pass the resolution, no, we didn't allow salary savings to be used for anything else. And those dollars obviously we anticipate those dollars would be there at the end of the fiscal year, and what's left there would obviously enhance the reserve.
Well, my question is, we have what, Mr. Budget Chair, 61 days?
The projection, I think, that we
Budget
went through earlier
directive.
was just a little over 60.
61.45 days is what we're projecting to have at the end of FY18. And that's primarily due to, I made a presentation to council a few weeks ago about some of the revenue trends. We had some revenues that we have on the watch list. So just due to those declining revenues, that did adjust down the projected fund balance days for FY18.
So where did those days that we had in the reserve, 63-plus days, where did that money go in this budget?
Well, I think you need to explain that the 63 days were projected if revenues had stayed on track.
That's correct.
And then we came to you and we showed you where the TAVT dollars, we project that we are going to be $1.7 million less than what we are accustomed to. And that's state legislative stuff, and sales tax is down $1 million.
1.3.
1.3, and Recorder's Court down $650,000. After school, before school, down $450,000. I think it was a total of $4.2 million that we, if all was on track, we'd have in hand that would support reserve.
So is it accurate for me to say that that money was allocated to this year's budget, portions of it?
No, the budget has been, we anticipated not our revenue being reduced in those categories we've named, and that's why you have a budget that's not $270 million, but $267 million. It's less than what the current budget is as we go forward to the new fiscal year, at least the proposed budget.
And then in addition to that, kind of along the same lines, last year we talked about the increase in health care costs across the board. And I think I specifically asked the question why both health care and retirement contributions went up. This year, it looks like we've reduced them and that we're staying at an even keel. Where did all that extra money go? Was that reallocated or allocated into this budget this year? The savings there?
The health, well, you have to correct me if I misunderstood what you just said, but the healthcare contribution per budgeted position did go down. We are reducing that for FY18. We had to fund the city's contribution for healthcare at the $6,100 per position level because two things. Our healthcare costs cross 2 fiscal years. So the amount that we needed for 2017's for healthcare costs for the healthcare contribution for the city We needed the $6,100. That was the projection that we received from our benefits consultant that we needed for calendar year 2017. And so going into calendar year 2018, because of the Health and Wellness Center and some of the other plan design changes that are being recommended, we don't need as much for fiscal year 18 as far as the city's contribution to the health insurance per budgeted employee. And so it's not necessarily that it was a savings. We needed that amount for the city side, but also the employees' increases, those didn't take effect until January of 2017. So for 6 months, the city was, I won't say funding more than their share, but we were funding the lion's share of what we needed for health care for this fiscal year, because employee increases didn't actually kick in until January of 2017. And our benefits consultant, that's actually the next topic on the agenda, is the health care update from Shaw Hankins. And I don't know if, since we're talking about health care, if it's a good time for us to sort of get into that presentation from Shaw Hankins, and maybe they can explain it a little bit better than I just did if I didn't answer your question.
I think the easy way is that it wasn't a savings, it was expended as anticipated, and then this budget is prospective cost.
So it was expended into healthcare to offset the cost, and there was also an employee increase in healthcare costs.
Right.
But we were also told there was a savings in that cost from last year, the allocation of last year. Am I right on that?
Well, the FY17 per budgeted position contribution for the city is $6,100. For FY18, we're only making a contribution of $5,900 per budgeted position.
But last year, we made the total contribution?
No, we didn't make it was a 70-30 split last year. I think that maybe another way to say it is that the cost of health care we project is less for this coming year than it was for the
That's
prior
an obvious. I'm talking about last year.
But can I ask a quick question, not to
Yeah.
interrupt, but is it a blended cost? Because the health care goes on a calendar year. And we would have, it actually would have covered the FY16 and 17 budget.
That's
because the
correct.
cost for 16 would have bled over into the first
Right.
half of the expenditures on health care in 17. And then when they identified that the Health and Wellness Center and a few other things had an impact, that would have been in our fiscal year 17, but that would have covered
Part
this-
of calendar
finishing
years.
this year, finishing calendar year.
2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
It gets confusing because it crosses.
Yeah.
It crosses 3 different fiscal years with 2 calendar years. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree, it's confusing. I'm not sure that I get it, but I just know that that's how they came up with that figure. It's blended over a couple of fiscal years. But it should be reflected this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can talk, I don't want to exhaust a lot of time on it right now,
Okay.
but
Well, and we do
we
have.
can talk about it, even though that was last year and it is where it is today. But I just had that question that I wanted to ask in general, that we had that conversation last year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Counselor Huff?
Quick question. It was just mentioned that the salary savings was just kept in the budget. What would be our reserve days if we didn't have the salary savings?
Number, but I can tell you, we would be certainly lower than 60 days. And it would have turned out, it would have been lower than 60 days, we know that, but it would have been lower than the 60 days, the less than 60 days that we projected. In other words, I think we were at 58 days at that time when we brought the salary savings idea.
58, 59, right.
50, she said 54, I can't, 54, I can't remember. Had we not done anything, and then the revenue projections came in like it did with TATV and Recorder's Court and after-school program and sales tax, we would have been probably less than 50 days. I mean, it would have been, it would not have been a good
So it's
picture.
about a 10-day swing?
Well, $2.5 million, which is where we were anticipating we'd have in salary savings for FY17, amounts to 6.10 reserve days. So we'd be significantly less than
Okay.
60.
So each day now is still worth what, 400?
410,000.
10?
Each day now is $410,101.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
So are we ready to?
I think we're ready to go into the healthcare.
Okay. So I'd like to request that Retha Hollowell, our HR director. And then I'm moving.
Good afternoon, Council. Today, we want to provide an update on our health care, to talk about where we are and where we are projecting to go for calendar year 2018. As we look toward the budget for FY18 and thinking about what we think we need to do with health care, we made sure that we met with our stakeholders, those key stakeholders being our Employee Benefits Committee. We had an opportunity to meet with them a couple of times to talk about where we were with health care and some of the things that were going on with health care and what we were proposing. We also had an opportunity to meet with the Council Health Care Task Force and talk about some of the proposals for calendar year 2018 doing health care. So those have been some very, I believe, productive meetings that we've had with our Employee Benefits Committee. The chairperson for the Employee Benefits Committee is here today, Seth Brown, and he can give you some input from the employee perspective if you have questions about some of the things that have been proposed for health care for 2018. Our benefit consultant is here and was at all of those meetings with the Employee Benefits Committee as well as the Council Health Task Force and shared in detail about our health care plan. So our consultants are here today to provide an update. I believe you have a handout already of what they'll be reviewing, and certainly we'll be able to answer any questions that you have. Tammy Starkey with Shaw Hankins is here. Of course, other Shaw Hankins members are here, but Tammy is going to do the presentation today.
Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Starkey, Vice President of Client Services with Shaw Hankins. I have Todd Hooper and Wes Ross, Senior Consultants with Shaw Hankins here today. And I also have Dondi Ballard as a pharmacist and Vice President with PharmaVale, our current pharmacy benefit management vendor, to assist with any specific questions you may have on prescription drugs today. To start off, I wanted to provide a health plan overview of where the plan currently stands compared to prior calendar years, or the plan year of how our plan designs and deductibles currently run. So we know from 2014 to 2015 for our medical claims expense, this excludes prescription drugs, this is medical only on this exhibit, we saw a $5.9 million reduction in medical claims between 2014 and 2015. And then 2015 to 2016, those claims were fairly flat at about 1.8% increase overall. We know the majority of this reduction was due to the removal of the Muskogee Manor Group. $1.8 million in claims were attributed to that. And then another part of this reduction was due to the spousal surcharge that was implemented in 2015. We saw a $1.1 million reduction in claims due to the removal of spouse claims from the plan. So those two items made up the majority of the reduction year over year on our medical claims expense. In addition to the other initiatives that were put in place with the Health and Wellness Center, focusing on wellness, tobacco surcharges, those items, to see a reduction overall year to year. Sure.
Is that net of premiums?
Yeah, this is claims only. So paid claims, medical claims.
Okay, okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sure. On the,
Some of those.
Oh, definitely, yes. So these are the claims that are included in the budget items. So the budget includes total costs, which is medical and pharmacy
Right.
claims, any fixed costs for an administration on the plan, and then any Affordable Care Act taxes and fees.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. As far as our prescription drug costs, we did see a steady increase in the cost year over year from 2014, really 2013 to 2016. This is despite of the reduction we saw in the lives on the plan. So, and despite seeing a reduction from the Muskogee Manor Group and the spouses coming off the plan, we've continued to see that steady increase year over year on our prescription drugs. The claims for 2017 year-to-date are through February stated on these slides. And then on page 5, you see total claims, medical and prescription drug claims, where we do see through February, we're at $2.9 million for the calendar year. If we annualize that based off of just 2 months of experience, we'd end up at $17.6 million. So a bit below where we ran for 2016. But again, it is early to identify a trend, but that does assist us in setting the budget by looking forward through the calendar year. And then on page 6, we look at the cost on a per employee per year basis to come back to a comparative norm because of the reduction in the head counts on the plans, where we do still see that reduction in cost from 2014 to 2015. We did see 420 employees come off of the plan between those 2 years, but still the average cost per employee did reduce overall and has remained fairly steady over the last, for 2016, and then at $7,900 for 2017 so far this calendar year. Page 7 does review the impact to the changes that were made within the plan from calendar year 14 to 15, the $1.8 million in claims due to the Muskogee Manor, and then a 27% reduction in spouse claims with that surcharge being implemented. And then on page 8 and 9, I did want to show experience for the most recent 12 months, because we did make some plan design changes on the medical side, implementing our new 2 plan designs, silver and gold, and offering the Health and Wellness Center services to all employees. So we see that new plan design was implemented January 1st of 2017. And then on slide 9, you see where we implemented the new pharmacy benefit manager January 1st, 2017. When that new pharmacy benefit manager was implemented, no changes were made to plan design. It was just a simple change of the benefit manager and then also the negotiated cost for those prescription drugs. So we were not changing any benefits or coverage of prescriptions January 1st, 2017. And then page 10 addresses where we are running claims for medical and prescription drug claims for the fiscal year compared to what was budgeted for claims for fiscal year 17. So you'll see paid claims currently are at $12,461,329. The budgeted amount through February is $13,096,635. So we're running within 3% of the budget for this fiscal year 17. So as we look forward to funding the plan for fiscal year 18, we, again, use true actuarial modeling, looking at 24 months of claims experience to project the future cost. Because, as it was mentioned earlier, our plan years run calendar year and therefore straddle 2 fiscal years. We are projecting claims out through the end of calendar year 18, so December 31st, 2018. We're trying to set projections now that will carry us through that time period so that we can also set employee contributions and plan designs that will last through all of 2018. And so although the plan has run well over the last 12 months, we're running within 3% of the budget, and it's appropriately funded for this fiscal year. Medical trend does impact our projections because we're projecting so far out in the future. Currently, with us projecting with claims through February of 2017, projecting through the end of 2018, that's 22 months of unknown that we're trying to say, where do we expect claims to come in at during that time period? And so medical trend takes into account all factors that would increase our claims experience and that unknown cost.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, excuse me. Counselor Thomas has a question.
Tell me why we do it this way. Why do we have our insurance on a calendar year when we're paying for it on a fiscal year?
It's quite common. Most of the city and county governments that we work with have the same situation, and it's normally because plan deductibles run calendar year, and that's more easy for employees to understand that my deductible starts over January 1st with the new calendar year, and so we run the plan year January to December.
Well, I guess I might could understand that a little better if we had an insurance plan that we were administering, but since we are self-insured, I'm not sure why that is such a big deal.
Well, it is possible to go to a deductible that would start over July 1st and run with the fiscal year, but that would mean we would need to do a short plan year, so from January through June, the end of June, and then start over in July. And so some members would see that as a disadvantage of their deductible starting over at the 7th month of the calendar year. So they only get 7 months or 6 months of credit, really.
I guess my concern is every time we have a report on our health insurance, we're told this is difficult because it's calendar year versus fiscal year. And I'm wondering, so why don't we fix that? I'm not proposing that we fix it. I'm just saying, you know, why can't we get rid of that argument, you know, and do it?
I can respond, Councilor Thomas.
Thank you.
This has come up before. I believe it was Councilor Davis that asked the very same question. Why can't we get on the same page? Have our calendar year, have our health insurance run the same as our fiscal year with the city.
You mean Councilor Davis and I are on the same wavelength?
I think, I may be wrong, but I think Councilor Davis actually asked this very same question. It's been 2 or 3 years ago. But yes, it is something that's within our control, but as has already been explained, it will take us a while to get on the same year, doing a fiscal year with our health care as we do the budget is that fiscal year. So it can be done, but it would take us a while to do it. And yes, it sounds easy to do, but you know, it takes a while to transition into it. But we could do it.
Okay, I'm just thinking that, yeah, but once we do it, it's done forevermore. So until we decide to change it again.
It would just be a pretty lengthy educational process. I mean, just talking to our employees about the healthcare options as it is now is a very, very, it's tedious because it's very difficult to understand. It's no knock on anybody. It's a tough subject to really grasp all the nuances of. But I agree. I mean, it's at the pleasure of this council. And if we thought that it was going to solve a significant enough issue, then it might be worth the pain of going through the change and tying it to a fiscal year. So.
If I may, you said that we are we're pretty close budget to actual. Is this like other some other things that we pay that there is a spike, we expect a spike at a certain time of the year, or is this 3% does this look pretty safe to us?
There is a seasonality effect to claims, and so that normally follows those flu seasons, the winter, fall months. So we've seen that in this fiscal year by capturing those December, January, February claims. That's normally where we'll see a spike. Outside of that, a spike would be driven by a high-cost claim, and those are normally unknown.
Okay, so we don't expect that our claims generally go up in October or whatever?
We generally expect them to elevate in October, November, December, that season of cold and flu months, just because of more utilization to the plan, but we've already seen that during this fiscal year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So medical trend is comprised of overall price inflation. There is some provider cost shifting where providers shift costs from the uninsured or discount payers like Medicare and Medicaid to private employers, meaning that in their negotiations with what they're going to pay towards private health insurance, they're going to ask for more to offset for what they're not getting from the uninsured or the private, the discount payers. There's a leveraging effect due to fixed deductibles and copays, meaning that as the cost of coverage or cost of claims does increase year over year, if we're holding deductibles and copays the same, then naturally there's going to be more responsibility on the plan as the member's not paying more of that share. There is overall increased utilization each year that we have to take into account because of an aging population. There's more expensive drug and medical treatments that drive that increased cost to healthcare, technological advancements, and then also any government mandates that are driving costs for healthcare. So the national average for medical trend is 8 to 10%. That's what a plan can expect to see if they're not putting any cost-saving measures in place. If we're not changing the plan design, we're not putting any wellness initiatives to impact claims long-term, most plans will see an 8 to 10% increase. The initial projection of the calendar year 18 increase for the city was 5.9% increase. So that would have meant a 5.9% increase to the employees' contributions. However, last week we were able to update that with 2 more months of favorable claims experience. So claims continued to run well, reduce the impact of that unknown medical trend by 2 months. And so we reduced that to 4.5%. It's about $869,000 overall. With the proposed changes that we're showing would offset that $869,000 that would additional funding for calendar year 18 to get us to no increase. So the proposed plan changes to accomplish no rate increase for calendar year 18. The first includes an increase in the cost for emergency room care. That's currently a flat copay on both plans, and that would now go to a copay plus a coinsurance. The coinsurance on the silver plan is currently 20% of the cost is what the member pays, and on the gold plan it's 10% of the cost. So now they would have their copay plus a percentage of the emergency room cost. There's 2 factors there. One is to have the member understand the cost of emergency room care versus going to another either retail option, their primary care physician, when that is available. And 2 is just to have that reduction in the claims cost. According to our reporting from Blue Cross Blue Shield, in 2016, we had 591 avoidable emergency room visits, and that was 63% of our overall emergency room utilization was avoidable based off of the diagnosis that was received during that visit. And the top avoidable diagnoses that were experienced were back pain, nausea and vomiting, headache, and then upper respiratory infection. So these are examples of where having the member pay a greater share of that emergency room visit may impact their utilization and it will have them think twice on their decision to utilize the emergency room versus urgent care or their primary care physician, where that expense is much lower.
Councilor Baker.
An urgent care center is not considered the same, is it, even if it's owned by the same hospital group?
Right, if it's outside of that emergency room setting, if it's billed as urgent care instead of emergency room, it's not going to fall into that.
Thank you.
Is there any break given if they're admitted?
Yes, if they're admitted, then that is waived. So if you're admitted, the copay's waived, then it's going to go to inpatient services, and that's deductible and coinsurance. Based on national benchmarks from the Willis Towers Watson survey, within the Southeast, employers of the same size as the city, 41% of those employers have a copay and 20% coinsurance on their emergency room visits. All Blue Cross Blue Shield standard plan designs have already converted to having a copay and coinsurance on emergency room visits. So this is within norms to have this type of cost share for emergency room utilization. The other proposed plan change to the medical coverage is to increase the urgent care copay. That is currently $40, to increase that to $60. That's a projected savings of $73,500. Again, the goal there is to impact utilization. When there is an alternative to see a primary care physician, that cost is lower than urgent care. Urgent care has a much higher overhead. It's staffed for the unexpected because there's no appointments. So going to a primary care physician is going to be a lower expense for the plan, and therefore the member should see a discount by going to their primary care physician versus urgent care. So this would impact utilization. If they do choose to go to urgent care, then they're just sharing in a greater portion of that additional cost.
And you know, I guess if a lot of urgent care visits from people I talk to are with children or people they just put off going, and then all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more of an imperative that they get to some kind of care. But if they access the health and wellness clinic and they make the appointments ahead of time, in many cases, some of those things are cut off at the pass, so to speak, and they pay nothing for going in there. And if it's a generic medication, they actually leave with the medicine right then. So,
Exactly.
So I think that's part, if we continue, and I know you are, and I'm jumping ahead probably, but if we can continue to hammer the educational piece and let them know the availability, that you don't even have a copay with your, I mean, you go to your private physician when you have something that you need to see on a regular basis. But if it's some kind of infection or something that before it gets worse, if you go to the health and wellness center, it's basically free.
Yes.
And then that eliminates, if you go in there 4 days later, from having to go see the urgent care. So.
Yes, that's definitely an excellent point. The changes proposed to the prescription drug coverage to, again, accomplish no increase to the employee contributions in calendar year 18. The first, and I did provide a detailed outline of the recommendations separate from your booklets. It has the PharmaVale logo on the top, and that provides some additional information on the recommendations and why they are recommended. Any recommendations to the prescription drug coverage, any impacted member would be directly contacted by PharmaVale to indicate what's changing about their prescription drug coverage, what's changing about a medication they're currently taking, and what their alternatives are. If PharmaVale needs to work with their provider to make a change to the prescription they're currently on or to evaluate the prescription they're currently on, then the pharmacist team at PharmaVale will work with the provider as well as the member.
Counselor Thomas.
And would you speak to if an employee is on one of these medications and we move to this, what impact will it have on their financial contribution to the drug? I don't know how much, for example, if you have a prescription for Nexium, I don't know how much the employee is paying now, but if I'm paying something, right?
Yes, they're paying a copay for that name brand drug.
And if we do this, then I can buy it over the counter, not have to have a prescription. Is the financial outlay about the same, or is there a?
We've seen it be a bit less than the actual copay for that name brand drug. So if they're filling Nexium, that's a $40 copay, and then they'll have to buy 2 supplies of the over-the-counter to equal their 30 days, and those are normally $15 a piece, so that's $30 for their
Okay.
monthly supplies. So in the majority of cases, we've seen it be a lower expense for those proton pump inhibitors over the counter versus filling it over on the plan as a prescription.
Is it correct to say that our employees should not experience any kind of a dramatic increase in how much they are paying for their prescriptions?
That's
by
correct.
looking at this chart?
Yeah, there are some where we'll see an increase, and I'll outline what prescriptions we're proposing a member increase on, but it's only on specific medications. So for that first proposal, the proton pump inhibitors, which includes Nexium, Prilosec, Prevacid. So that's proposed to cover those over-the-counter now because the FDA has approved over-the-counter status for all of those medications, and that's what we indicated would be the same cost. And I'll go through the other proposals. Some of them there is a cost
That would be
increase.
helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So all of these proton pump inhibitors, FDA has granted over-the-counter status to. They are identical in therapeutic effectiveness for the generic or the over-the-counter version versus these name brand options. This currently makes up 1.7% of the city's total drug spend, so it does have a large impact in savings by removing this claims expense from the plan, but still having members have the opportunity to continue the same treatment with these medications over the counter. So this projected savings for that change is $123,960. The next proposal is to discontinue what we call specific Me Too drugs. These are drugs that manufacturers come out, they have no enhanced clinical or therapeutic superiority over drugs that they are based upon. They come out, distribute them as a new marketing effort, and they also, manufacturers distribute copay savings cards. So that means that members are incentivized to take this new name brand drug because with that copay savings card, it's a discount coupon card, they are paying less for the name brand than they would be their generic copay on the plan. But that does not save the plan any money. The claims expense is the same to the plan, but it is saving the member and incentivizing them to take a name brand drug. So these medications are specifically Axone, Lyrica, Prestige, Restasis, that we are proposing to eliminate those because they have a generic or a lower cost name brand option that is therapeutically and clinically the same. That projected savings is $208,075. The next proposal is to change specific medications to a non-preferred tier, which would mean a higher copay for these drugs. So majority of these are currently a $40 copay, and they would go to $60 under the plan design. All of these prescriptions have a much less costly therapeutic equivalent drug available, and those include Vytorin, Latuda, Relpax, Vyvanse, and Nuvigil. That projected savings is $23,960. So again, with this recommendation, any member that's on one of these medications currently would be contacted to indicate that their copay would go up starting January 1st, 2018, and to educate them on what their options are to save money. The next proposal is to substitute certain hormone replacement drugs like Fortesta, Androgel, and Axiron with lower cost compounded drugs. Again, these drugs have no therapeutic or clinical advantage over these lower cost compounded drugs that can be obtained locally. And that projected savings is $100,100. The next proposal is to implement a higher cost share, percentage cost share on lifestyle drugs. These are drugs that don't have an overall health impact or impact a member's health. So that's going to be Viagra, Cialis, Levitra. So if we put in a proposal where the members paid 50% of these drugs, that would save the plan $58,895. And then the final recommendation is to increase the copay on specialty medications. Specialty medications are high-cost injectable drugs. You see these often on advertisements with Humira, Enbrel. They're the most common commonly advertised medications, they are very expensive. So they're normally $2,000 to $5,000 a month. Members are currently paying $60 for these medications. And in some scenarios, there's no alternative for these medications. That is what's needed to treat their condition. But in other scenarios, there is an option. So Humira, for example, was introduced to treat rheumatoid arthritis. It's currently being marketed to treat psoriasis, ulcerative colitis, and there are other alternatives that can be effective in treating those conditions. So by increasing that copay to $150, we're one, having the member understand that these are much more expensive medications and to be educated on what their options are when making a decision. So to be more consumer-minded in the medications that they're choosing. So to impact utilization and have them just share in a small portion of that overall expensive medication. So the overall cost savings for that proposal is $15,000. You will see that there's a recommendation within the details that I did not include here because it's not a projected impact to the budget, but it is a proposal to have biosimilars as the covered prescription as those are available on the market for those specialty drugs. Biosimilars are going to be the generic version of those biologic expensive Humira, Enbrel medications that I discussed. However, the first was approved in 2015 by the FDA, but it has not yet come to the market. There's more to be approved this year, but none that have come to the market, so there's not a projected savings to the plan until those become available on the market. But average savings on those biosimilars versus the biologic specialty medications is about 20% savings. So again, on a high-cost drug, that is a significant savings to the plan. Are there any questions on the prescription drug recommendations?
It doesn't appear so.
Okay. Then the last recommendation to accomplish no increase for 2018 is not within plan design, but within the revenue driven into the plan, and this is to reinstate the tobacco surcharge. The tobacco surcharge is proposed at $50 a month, and that will apply to all employees who use tobacco products. However, there will be a reasonable alternative program available where if members participate in a tobacco cessation program, they will be able to, the surcharge will be waived. So even if they're not successful in quitting use of tobacco products, if they complete that program successfully, then they will not incur the surcharge. In the past, the surcharge had applied to about 500 employees when this was previously in place. We're estimating that about 300 would end up paying the surcharge, not going through that tobacco cessation program, and that would generate $180,000 in additional revenue to offset the increased funding needed to the plan. Next, I wanted to provide an update on the Health and Wellness Center program and the overall wellness program initiative. For calendar year 17, we implemented the Health and Wellness Center was expanded availability to all members. And we also put in place a new vendor that has been very successful, and we've received great feedback from the employees and dependents that have utilized the Health and Wellness Center with the new vendor. And as a part of that, we implemented a wellness initiative for employees to have a personal health assessment. So to answer a question on their overall habits, how they eat, their stress levels, just their overall risk levels, and then complete a biometric screening. So to look at their cholesterol, their blood pressure, their height and weight, and evaluate their overall health risk. As an incentive to participate in the program, we implemented a $500 deductible offset. We've had so far 449 participants within this program, so about 20% of our population has had this personal health assessment, 200 female, 249 male, and 139 of those have gone into the Health and Wellness Center to review their personal health assessment in person. We know that the 20% is well below ideal participation in the program. Ideal participation is more 85 to 90% because this allows us to touch the population that's not going in for an annual physical, that we need to identify early their risk and manage those conditions that have the potential to increase in severity and be a large expense and claims cost to the plan. And also to help our employees become healthier and identify their unknown risk. So our goal in 2018 is to increase communication of the wellness program, of the value of participating in the program, and the value of the Health and Wellness Center. And then it was also proposed by the Employee Benefits Committee that a more valuable incentive to employees instead of the deductible offset credit would be to provide 2 wellness days or additional time off days or leave days for participating in the program, that employees would see that as more valuable as an incentive to participate.
Excuse me just a second. Councilor Barnes?
You know, we spoke about this at the meeting. You know, in the long run, this is a win-win for everybody. It's a win, definite win for each of the employees. I mean, something like this would be a fortune on the outside. And it's good to know, by the way, what your numbers are. And then secondly, I think if you push the thought that if they continue this, it will automatically drive down the premium costs. So it's a win-win every way that you look at it. And I know I talked to Reith, and I know that you are advertising it among employees. I don't know exactly what the problem is, because this is really a gift, a huge gift, personally for the employees. And then in the long run, as far as driving down the cost. So, and I think we did speak, you are letting them know that it's a double gift. Absolutely. You are letting the employees know that.
Yes, yes.
So I just don't know, 20%, I mean, for something like this, that is such a huge gift. I'm coming from the standpoint that I wish more of the employees did it, because you should know what your numbers are. You should know what your health status is. And secondly, if you look down everybody's, we're fortunate enough to not to raise this year, but in order to help them in the long run, more of the employees need to take this here.
Definitely, yes, you're exactly right. It's a huge value by having knowing your numbers, having that personal assessment, being able to sit down with that provider and discuss those numbers, and it's no cost to the member, and it's very convenient.
And I'm not talking about it because this costs us a lot, because a lot of money if they had to come out of pocket. So this is free, one. And then secondly, it's huge to know what your health status, because there are a lot of individuals that I find in the community are walking around, they don't even realize things that are going to be affecting them later. So, you know, and I know that you're doing your best to try to let the employees know what a huge, huge benefit this is, and you can only do what you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Allen?
Thanks, sir. I wanted to go back, if you would bear with me a minute, to the tobacco
Yes.
page. If I remember, the cost of employee per day is $79.24. Do you know a cost for the tobacco user per day? Do we know that number?
The payroll deduction or the, the claims expense?
Yeah, I think it was claims, yeah.
I don't have a specific number on that. We can, because when someone goes in for medical services, it's not always indicated if they're a tobacco user. I know that national standards say a tobacco user normally costs a plan about $5,800 more per year in claims than a non-tobacco user.
Okay. My question revolves around the cessation program. We're giving them a break if they go through it, so they don't have to pay that fee.
Correct.
What's the rationale for not charging them if they continue to use tobacco?
The Affordable Care Act sets that regulation that if they successfully complete a reasonable alternative, then they cannot be assessed a surcharge. So it would just be in compliance with the Affordable Care Act as it currently stands.
So that's where I thought you were headed. So there's no option for us to charge them a lesser fee?
Currently, there's not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And before Councilor Baker speaks, I just wanted to ask about the tobacco, two quick things. One, number one, I thought we were still charging it. I guess we dropped it last year. The other question is, what happens if an employee, they find, they put down they're not a tobacco user, they find out they use tobacco. What happens to them when they go to try to file for their health insurance?
Councilor Henderson, we will implement the program the same as we did when we had it in place from 2007 till 2013 when we ended the program. So it works similar to random drug testing. So the employees would attest that they are not a tobacco user, but also subject themselves to random testing. And if the employee is found that they are, via random testing, that they are using tobacco, they subject themselves to either not being taken off the health care plan for 12 months or paying the full cost of the health care premium for 12 months. And that's the penalty that was in place when we were, had it in place from 2007 to 2013.
I'm not going to debate whether it's too light or too strong. I just think it's important that all the employees know.
Absolutely.
So that they understand the risk they take if this is adopted. Okay, thank you. Councilor Baker?
My question was about the $500 incentive program. I was reading some of the information that came out after we had passed it. I didn't realize, and it was talking about the end of the last deductible dollars.
Correct.
Could be used. Explain that a little bit, and would there be any benefit moving up to let it be the first deductible dollars? Would that encourage more people to use it?
It would encourage additional utilization, but it would have a large impact to the budget, because then we're going to pay first dollar coverage, which majority of employees are accumulating some portion of their deductible. So it's put on the back end to be a lesser impact on the overall budget, the expense of the plan, but still be an incentive to reduce your overall expense, the member's overall expense.
Okay. I was just trying to, for the benefit of the employees, to get the most use of it, which was our intent, to help them mitigate the cost. It seemed like moving up to the front end would help them. But of course, this year there's not an increase, but nonetheless, but I haven't had time to work through the budget piece of that. So,
Okay. So if we did continue to offer that deductible offset instead of the paid time off days, the 2 additional leave days, moving it to the front end would have an impact to the budget and would cause an increase in employee contributions.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Davis?
I have a question for Director Hollowell. As it relates to the proposed tobacco surcharge, I want to, I believe last year, last cycle, we talked about this, and based on the Affordable Health Care Act, that there was some issues on the management side, I believe, that we struggled with.
Yes, that's,
attendance, maybe?
well, when the rules regarding the Affordable Care Act changed, such that we had the surcharge in place for tobacco users. And we would have to have done exactly what's being described now, offer a reasonable alternative, such that if the employee participated in the reasonable alternative, then they would no longer have to pay the surcharge. So hindsight is 20/20. If I had known, like I know now, I think I would not have recommended that we do away with it. I say that, but it's because I was concerned about our ability to manage the change that ACA had put in place. But I feel like now, based on what I do know, we can manage it.
Right, thank you. The requirements the possible requirements we talked about on the employee, you can actually do that?
Say that again
The
now?
strict requirements, you can actually place those requirements that you referred to earlier?
Yes, yes, in terms of if they
I
if
think
they
you're talking
end up.
whether they fail or they don't go
Right.
through, or
Yes.
however it
Yes,
transpires.
we can subject them to, just as I said, if they want to continue to stay on the health care plan, then they pay the full premium cost of health care for 12 months.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir. And we're about halfway through the presentation, and we've getting close to running short on time, so.
Okay, we'll hit it briefly. On page 19, we have the overall stratification of the risk based on the 20% of that population that did participate in the personal health assessment. So 62% were moderate risk, 10% high risk, and 28% low risk. I did provide you also a handout of the personal health summary. This is a brochure that members receive upon completing the personal health assessment. Again, this is a very valuable piece that tells them in detail where they stand based on all their numbers with blood pressure, BMI, cholesterol. It gives them green, yellow, red coding to know what's in a good range, what's at risk, and to know where they should stand to be in a good range. It also gives them a projection on their risk for cardiovascular disease based on their numbers. So they're encouraged to review this with either their healthcare provider or within the Health and Wellness Center. There's also a customized video that is sent to members to outline where they fall within each of their number ranges and what that means to their health and their risk levels. So out of this population of 449 that completed the personal health assessment, 268 were pre-hypertensive based on their levels, and we know that standards tell us left unmanaged, 46% of those could convert to being hypertensive. Untreated, hypertension leads to a stroke in more than 25% of patients. Stroke patients cost about $136,000 for treatment of the stroke and follow-up care. So the potential increased risk cost of a stroke is $4.2 million. And again, that's based off of just 20% of the population. So this is just to show how identifying and managing these types of risk early on can have a large impact to the member's health and to the savings to the plan by avoiding these types of high-cost claimants such as a stroke. High cholesterol, 77% of participants had elevated cholesterol levels. We know that high cholesterol leads to having twice the risk of developing heart disease. The average cost of treating a heart attack is $38,501 for the first 90 days after the heart attack occurs. So if just 10% of this population had a heart attack, that's additional cost of $269,000 to the plan. So again, spread that out over the entire employee population, we capture much more of that risk and can impact that additional expense exposure. For diabetes, 204 of the participants were pre-diabetic. Left unmanaged, 30% of those could convert to being diabetic within 3 years. Each diabetic patient cost as much as $7,800 more than a non-diabetic patient each year, according to the American Diabetes Association. So this is a potential increased cost additional of $477,360. Utilization within the Health and Wellness Center from just June 2016 through March 2017, when we implemented the new vendor of Care ATC managing that Health and Wellness Center, we've had 505,000 visits, 1,148 unique different patients, 824 are treating chronic disease patients. 5,424 labs were filled, 12,400 scripts filled, and then 424 injections given. 75% of the visits are employees, 15% are spouse, and 10% are dependent children. So in addition to early identification and managing of these risk factors to impact our claims expense, we know that each visit and lab, every service done within the Health and Wellness Center is a lower expense to the plan versus a retail provider. So if we annualize the average visits, we would say we'd have a little over 6,000 office visits for the year. The average cost on the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan For office visits and any lab expenses that are incurred with that office visit is $254. The average cost within the Health and Wellness Center is $184. So every visit that's completed within the Health and Wellness Center saves the plan $70. So that's $420,000 a year in savings compared to that member going outside to a retail provider. For prescription drugs, if we annualize that, we expect to fill almost 15,000 prescriptions. The average cost for a prescription at the Health and Wellness Center is $11.26. The average cost on the health plan is $30.23. So again, that's $18.97 in savings for every prescription. Part of that is because prescriptions are available at a lower cost to the Health and Wellness Center provider, and then part of that is having that member take a lower cost prescription because it is available at no cost to them, so incentivizing them to use a generic lower cost alternative. Annual savings is projected at $282,956. So overall, projecting first-year savings within the Health and Wellness Center of a little over $703,000, just based off of services completed within the Health and Wellness Center. And then we know the larger impact is on our claims experience by having members participate in the biometric, in the coaching if they're high risk, and improving their health. So we talked about the impact of medical trend earlier. If a plan or an employer makes no changes to their plan to impact cost in future years, they can expect to see an 8 to 10% increase year over year. So for the city, it would end up in 2020 at $26,972,000. So every year seeing an 8% increase in cost. But by impacting those trend increases and just moving that 8% to 3%, by improving overall health, by focusing on these other initiatives with wellness, we can bend that trend line, and it would save the plan overall $4.9 million over the next 5 years. To quickly highlight some other considerations that were brought up last year after the budget proposal. First was a proposal from an outside source to look at direct contracting with the local hospital and have a narrow network for our members to utilize one hospital within the area and have lower pricing. This would only be possible if we do not contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield for our medical plan. So we're currently evaluating a claims analysis, a repricing analysis to determine if we did move our vendor to another carrier or a third-party administrator for the plan, we could look at that type of narrow restricted network with the hospital, but likely we're going to see an increase in our expenses for all other providers. So we're currently working through that analysis to identify if it would generate any savings overall, and then what disruption would that provide to members by having access to only potentially one hospital in the area. The other proposal was to implement telemedicine. That was already in the works and was implemented for January 1st, 2017 with Teladoc. We had 118 employees enroll in that program. 21 consultations have been used so far this year since January. Projected savings about $5,800 because at the end of their consultation, they are asked, if you did not have this service available, where would you have gone? Would you have gone to your primary care, gone to emergency room, and a projected savings is reported to the city based off of that response. It was also proposed to provide health care counselors and advocates. Shaw Hankins does provide benefit counselors to assist employees with educating them on their plan, on what their options are, and what would be the best option for them and their family, and then also to assist with making their enrollment elections. So we come on site and are available for employees to sit one-on-one with a counselor. And we also have our service team available telephonically to answer any questions, help complete the enrollment, and then also throughout the year to act as their advocate to navigate the healthcare system, answer any questions about how a claim may be paid, to work on their behalf with a provider to ensure that it's paid accurately, and then also help them just maximize the value of their benefits. So that is available year-round with our service team. Another proposal was to use data analysis to reduce costs. We do provide monthly claims reporting to the HR and finance departments so that we're monitoring trends in cost, changes in enrollment, any large claims that may impact our future costs, the prognosis on those and how long they may impact the plan, and any spikes in utilization and identifying what's driving those. We also provide annual reporting through Xywave that shows us, compared to national benchmarks for other local governments, other employers within the Southeast, and other employers within our region, to identify how the city's expenses stack up compared to these other health plans. The next proposal was to implement stop-loss coverage. Stop-loss would protect the plan for any claims over a specific amount. So normally we would see that around $300,000, and that would mean that if a member incurred claims over $300,000, then the plan would no longer be responsible and it's reinsured through an outside insurance carrier. That is reviewed annually as a part of our plan renewal process. For 2017, we did review that, and the lowest cost would have been $940,000 in annual premium for that $300,000 specific deductible coverage. We only had one claim in 2016 that went over $300,000. That was $328,047. So in that scenario, we would have received $28,000 in reimbursement and have expended $940,000 for premium. So historically, that has not made sense for the city to carry that stop-loss coverage. The next recommendation was to convert qualifying children to peach care. We did provide some guidance there that children must be uninsured for 2 months prior to enrolling, and that if they are not approved for peach care upon that 2-month lag in coverage, then their next qualifying event to come back onto the city's plan would be the next open enrollment or the next January 1st. So we did caution against recommending that to employees, but our counselors are able to advise on eligibility for peach care based off of salary ranges. It was also recommended that the city may want to contribute to that peach care premium. That does impact affordability calculations for the Affordable Care Act, because any additional contributions that the city provides for an employee to opt out of coverage at the city is calculated into their affordability, and that would push them over the affordability threshold. So again, did caution on that option. And then finally, it was recommended to encourage and convert employees over 65 to Medicare. This goes against Medicare regulations, which we did outline that Medicare indicates that a plan should not incentivize a Medicare eligible employee or spouse to drop that coverage in favor of Medicare. So that is not compliant with Medicare regulations to incentivize or encourage that change. And it is subject to up to a $5,000 civil penalty for each violation that is incurred. Okay, that's the end.
Very good. Anybody have any more questions, any comments? City's total Councilor Davis is curious, the city's total contribution at the end of the year, last year.
Last year?
Do we have those numbers?
I don't have that. I know the claims projected, but not the total.
Well, if you could, I know you've got access to that, and I don't want to hold
Definitely,
us up
yes.
here, but if you could maybe shoot an email to the clerk of council, and she'll distribute that to the
Okay,
council.
the fiscal year, city's total contribution for fiscal year 17. Sorry?
Percentage of it.
Oh, percentage was 70%. Yeah, so we've adhered to the 70-30 split.
Well, thank you, and thank your team that we appreciate very much y'all coming. This is always one of the more difficult areas to grasp for us on how to mitigate some of the rising costs, and our goal is not wavered, and that is to provide the absolute best health care that we can in an affordable manner to our employees, and it's getting harder and harder to do. I don't want to start a whole nother discussion, but it appears that politically we may be heading to a reshuffle of the deck anyway.
Yes, it's something we definitely stay in front of what changes are being proposed and what may be approved. So at this point, I know there is a different recommendation on the table. It may affect pre-existing conditions, and so we definitely keep the city updated on what's changing and when that may occur.
So you monitor that real time and you make sort of estimations and adjustments just in case and trying to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak?
We definitely do. So we take that into consideration as we're projecting into 2018 of what changes may come into place. And then our legal team also sends, here's what's recommended and what that means for employers and what we should be considering. So that comes out fairly frequently as anything new comes out of.
All right, we're counting on you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no pressure, thanks. I know we've got a transportation presentation next, but the marshal has been waiting patiently, so if it's okay with this group, I'd like to go ahead and allow the marshal to come forward with his presentation.
That's all I was going to say.
Okay. You'd have done it better. I should have let you say it. I'm sorry. Welcome, Marshal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mayor Tomlinson and Budget Chairman, Henderson, councilors, City Manager, City Attorney. I want to thank you for allowing me to come out and present my budget presentation and the issues that are affecting the Marshal's office. As you know, we've had some pretty difficult times over the past 2-3 years. And I know that sometimes that it can create differences. So I hope that today that we can work through any difference or any risks and heal those to work for what we're here to do, and that is to carry out the business of the people. As you know, the Marshal's office is comprised of trained, sworn, certified peace officers that have full arrest powers. Therefore, they must be equipped with the vital tools needed and necessary for them to carry out their jobs. We carry the same ballistic bulletproof vests that the Columbus Police Department and the Sheriff's Office carry. We go through the same yearly training, and if called to back them up, we have to respond. Therefore, we have to be trained in order to do that. Although we serve and carry out the precepts of the municipal court, we encounter things like wanted felons, drugs, weapons, and other disputes involving civil matters. And I'm here as an advocate for the Marshal's office. As you know, I have a passion for what I do and for those that I represent in the Marshal's office. But we enter into the unknowns. Our job is very, very dangerous. And to enter into a dwelling that you don't know what's on the other side can be a very dangerous job. But I'll get into my presentation. I just wanted to make that. I'll go into the budget because of time. I'm here today to discuss our FY18 budget presentation and the agenda items. What we're asking for are two things, and that is to fund the 3 positions that were defunded in the FY16 budget and vehicle replacements for the FY18 budget. As you see in FY14, our budget was $1,323,055. FY15, $1,235,078, a reduction of $87,977. FY16, $1,075,259, another reduction, FY17 and FY18 proposed. We face some difficult challenges in the office, but we also have some critical needs, and those are the things that I want to discuss today. We're requesting the 3 sworn deputies that were defunded in our FY16 budget. In the marshal's office, we don't have a large number of deputies working, but if someone calls in sick or if they're in training, vacation, it cripples our operation. If our dispatcher is out sick, all of our deputies are cross-trained. One of the deputies would have to come in and dispatch. It leaves one less deputy in the field, which could potentially make the other deputy's job a little bit dangerous, because when we do evictions, we send 2 deputies into every eviction, because the eviction is a civil dispute, and we're there to neutralize it and to carry out the civil process. We have a backlog of evictions. There used to be a time that we could give a 24-hour notice and the parties would move. That's not happening anymore. I don't know if that's due to a lack of job, or they just have absolutely nowhere to go. But it's putting a damper on what we do, because when we have to stay at an eviction longer than we normally do, it backs up everything else. The lack of sworn deputies decrease our operation. I've already covered that when one is out sick. If approved, I would ask that the council could adjust our training budget, uniform budget, and also our gas budget line item. I want to speak about our vehicle replacement needs. The Columbus Consolidated Government policy, or the protocol that they've always followed, has been for turning in vehicles is 7 years or 100,000 miles. We spoke with the CCG fleet manager yesterday just to verify that. He sent to us what he looked at and studied, and he's recommending that we turn in 8 vehicles that are exceeding the 100,000 miles or the age requirement. We have vehicles that we have to jump off on a regular basis. We have vehicles that are squeaking, and we've had to change out 2 engines. We've had to change out, I believe, 2 or 3 transmissions. And the older and older those cars get, the more wear is put on those vehicles. It costs us more, and it eats up our automotive parts budget. So we're just asking that the council will consider this in our 2018, oops, it went out here, okay. I don't have a screen anymore. Okay, I'm sorry. I've covered that we've replaced 2 engines. That should be 3. Transmission, we've had suspension problems and batteries, and that's excluding routine maintenance. Let me go back to see if I didn't. That's what I need to cover. I just want to let you look at that. I know that the public can't see it, but that is the recommendation from the fleet manager on our vehicles. So I just wanted to point that out to you. I know that we've been here before about the same thing, and I just wanted to bring it back to your attention that this is not a wish list, it's a need list, Mr. Chairman. Okay, and you do have that in your packet too, also. That should be page 1 of 6 that actually shows the vehicles, the miles, and the turn-in replacement value. And if there's any questions, that's the end of my presentation.
We do have some questions. Councilor Garrett?
Marshall Countryman,
Yes, sir.
I've been kind of running the math, and if the vehicles that you requested, if they have been added to your capital outlay, and I'm assuming they need the build out, it'd come out to about $458,000 or so on top of what you'd already requested. The big part of those expenses is the pursuit build-out. If we were to be able to work some sort of pursuit vehicles in there, can you take any of the parts from the old vehicles that are part of that pursuit package to alleviate the $27,000 build-out?
That would be easy to do for an admin vehicle, because an admin vehicle we don't have to have a pursuit package in it. In the pursuit package is the computer, laptop, the tracking system, the front-back radar, and I forget what else comes in it, but what I would ask the council to do is that, because of the software updates, we have to pay for that now. Even our computers now are outdated. We're asking for more computers, and that's what we have to pay for now. But if the council could allocate me a dollar amount and just allow me to sit with my command staff and to allow us to work it out, we need vehicles, and I would hate to have to borrow parts from another vehicle in order to work that out. But if we have to reduce the cost, that I would just, rather the council allocate a dollar amount and let me get with my command staff, because we do have to have updated laptops and so forth.
I think it's going to be the same situation as it was with the sheriff, though. We're going to need to know specifically what the money's going to go to.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to need, basically, I mean, when you look at the other capital outlays, it looks like they got up 25% or less of what they requested.
Right.
So if we've got just, let's say, $460,000 to make the math easy for your vehicle request, what are your, just so everybody knows, I mean, it may not be something that gets approved, but just so we know, what are the actual, your priority vehicles you need replaced? It looks like you've got a few 2005 Crown Vics that are, that's the oldest ones it looks like.
Those are all field vehicles.
Field
Those are all field vehicles. If I'm not mistaken, I think we may have maybe 2 vehicles. We have three admin vehicles that meet the mileage in the year. So of those 3 vehicles, we would not need the tech packages in it. So that would reduce that cost by roughly about $75,000.
Okay, and as far as the 3 positions you're requesting, are those OLOS funded, or are they funded from general budget?
Those were OLOS. That was actually part of the local option sales tax. The citizens voted to give us 5 positions, and those positions were defunded. So we're just asking for those to be funded out of the OLOS again.
Okay, and if those are funded, and let's say there were a couple of vehicles we may add, I mean, are you, okay, I know what you're talking about, going back and talking to your command staff, but we'd have to have that restricted to those vehicles, to those positions.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to make 2 corrections to the marshals. Well, 1 correction to the presentation. As far as the allocated budget differences that are listed for FY14 and 15, those are actual expenditures, not the adopted budgets. The adopted budget for FY14 was $1,263,078, and the adopted budget for FY15 was $1,255,444. So the difference between the 2 fiscal years, as from an adopted budget standpoint, was $7,634. But I will say the city's contribution for the pension percentages did fluctuate for those fiscal years as well. It did decrease. So from FY14, the public safety pension contribution was 23%, general government was 20%. That was what was allocated in the budgets. But in FY15, that number reduced to where we were only allocating 22% for public safety pensions and 17% for general government. So some of that difference would be accounted for with our contribution rates changing from year to year. The other thing, as far as the 3 positions that were unfunded by council, those were all positions in the general fund. The marshal still has his 5 positions in the OLOS fund.
Okay, Councilor Huff?
Go ahead.
Yeah, he still has his old loss positions, but he did lose 3.
Yes, he did. Those were in the general
General
fund. Mhm.
Okay, because he's saying he's understaffed, so we're looking at, he's asking for those 3, so if we can get those 3 or 1, 2, something there. But anyway, my point at this junction in the road is, regardless of how we all feel, most of our public safety departments are usually taken care of to the point that they can do their core mission. And his core mission is to handle the courts and evictions and things of that nature. So I'll tie it in like this. You know, the council participated in the budget cuts about 3 or 4 years ago where we lost our travel budget. And I've been serving on the board representing the city throughout all of this budget cut situation. And I've been paying my own way to represent Columbus Muskogee, and I just rolled off of a board a couple days ago. And it was put before me, how can you be from the 2nd largest city and have to pay your own way? I said, well, I don't know, but anyway, we're going through a few things, and I take this seriously enough to be here to represent Columbus Muskogee and get the job done. So what I'm saying all that to say is, it's not a good look for the 2nd largest city to have their marshal department jumping off cars and cannibalizing other cars in order to do their core mission. So the pursuit vehicles, we talked about this, I think, when I first came on board, is necessary because of the danger of the people that they sometimes encounter. And they have to arrest people from time to time, and you just don't want anybody sitting behind you. That needs to be, you need to have a cage between you even after handcuffing an individual, because it's a dangerous job. But they need new cars. My question is, with the recommendations of the fleet manager and our policy that has been in place since I've been on board since 2011, why would we not be in a position to, you know, fund at least 2 pursuit vehicles and an admin car?
Well, the OLOS fund capital was down this year due to our declining trend in revenues. The sales tax revenue projections for FY18, we're projecting we'll receive $1.3 million less. That directly affects the OLOS capital allocation that we give out to the public safety departments. If you'd like to place on the add delete list pursuit vehicles or admin vehicles for the marshal's department, you can most certainly do that. We just need an offset inside. Either that has to be adjusted for revenue or it needs to come from someone else's budget.
Okay. In that distribution of the OLOS, if I remember correctly, when the mayor did a budget letter, it was 30-something% for the police department and 30-some% for the sheriff department, and the marshal only got 0.2%. And it just didn't, it seemed like if that percentage was a little higher, he would have been able to get at least a couple of pursuit vehicles and an admin car.
Counselor, I've asked Deputy City Manager Hodge to share the other local option, sales tax, public safety, available dollars, and how that broke down by the public safety agencies. And at the appropriate time, I'm going to ask her to come forward and share that with you, and that'll pretty much lay it out to you.
Because I was sitting here doing the numbers the same as Councilor Garrett, and it comes out to You said that the sheriff department asked for about 400 and some thousand, I guess, of capital replacement or whatever. 1.7 million, and she was given 400 or so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to have the deputy city manager
Okay.
go ahead
But
and
let me
do
finish
that.
before we get to that. If you take those numbers that you stated, whatever those numbers are, and you divide them out, you'll come out at about 26 point some %. So my question is the same as Councilor Garrett. If you take the monies that were available to public safety and distribute them out at about 26%, there's money there for the cars.
Well, again, I think it'd be helpful to have her to share that information.
Okay, I'll yield for now.
Well, and I
Deputy
think,
City
too,
Manager.
as a matter of process, I mean, if Councilor Huff wants to place a couple of vehicles on the ad list, we ought to do it. Because we're at the very threshold of starting to examine his budget. And over the next several weeks, we'll be going through it. We'll have an opportunity to go pick through on the thumb drive and hear from other agencies as well, other departments. So that's the whole purpose of the add delete list. If Councilor Huff feels strongly about it, and I know Councilor Garrett had mentioned the same thing, put them on there. And then we'll revisit them at the end, and we'll look in the meantime. Both these gentlemen, I'm sure, will work with staff to try to identify funding to offset that. And, so that process has worked in the past. We just have to recognize that when we get to the add delete list, if we have not done enough due diligence or if the money's just not there, then we have to make the hard decisions. And I think it's going to help a lot when we get that list from Ms. Alexander that details the entire fleet so that we see how many other vehicles in other areas are also over the same thresholds.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to say that we'll have that information for you at the next meeting, because you may recall a few years ago, we took a look at the entire city fleet. And I believe that report, and I'm going on recollection, said that I believe it was 44% or more of the fleet for the entire city needed to be replaced then. And if we were to replace all those vehicles that met the criteria at that particular time, I believe the cost was $3.4 billion or some number. I can't remember, but 340 million or whatever. I just don't remember the number, but we'll get that for you, a copy of that report.
Well, and I just think that's, because if we work in a silo, we're going to end up piecemealing, and what we really desperately need, we just haven't had the money to do it, but what we need is a comprehensive plan on how we're going to try to address the replacement, the vehicle replacement program. Marshall needs, he's over the limit. I mean, I get it. If we had the money, I think it's a no-brainer, we'd put those vehicles in there. But we need to look at it from a holistic viewpoint and try to see what other areas are also over that limit, and then we can make an informed decision. So at this juncture, do you want to put these, or how many do you want to put on the ad list?
Councilor Garrett has an ad to do, and then I'll add after that, but I respectfully ask that the replacement report that's coming
Yes.
not involve the marshal with the whole city, but only with the public safety piece.
Well, no,
I'm saying if we get
the report that was provided to you a couple of years ago included the entire city. Now,
Yeah,
we certainly separated the public safety from the general non-public safety. So we can give you the entire report, but you'll see the one separated from the other.
Yeah, I remember. What I'm asking is, we're having a discussion about the OLOS funds that were given out, the 70% that was distributed to public safety.
And that's why I want the deputy city manager, would you come down here?
And if I can also add to the council that this is my third year straight asking for vehicles, so I just want to make mention of that.
Okay.
And I'd like to have her, it's a short presentation, but just go ahead and put that up.
And what's being passed out to you is the copy of the presentation, as well as the capital replacement or capital outlay forms for the basically the 5 major public safety agencies, police, fire, MCP, sheriff, and marshal, so that you'll have those in front of you to see what their requests actually were and then what the recommendation was to fund. So as Angelica went through, the public safety capital that was available for allocation was just over $1 million, $1,075,404. The police department made a request for $1.5 million, which included the 20 pursuit vehicles, 5 Tahoe pursuit vehicles, 2 motorcycles, and 3 admin vehicles. And what was recommended was 8 pursuit vehicles. They have close to 100 that meet the requirements, but they put in the request for 20 to try to address those that are the oldest, and we recommended to fund 8. For the fire department, their request was $5,798,250, which included protective clothing, thermal imaging camera, relocation of the Cascade system, 27 mobile data terminals, 10 computers for the ambulances, image trend hosting database, 3 ambulances, 3 engines, 3 quints, 4 staff vehicles, and other requests of over $294,000. What was recommended for them was their number 1 priority, which was the protective clothing at $156,000. So as you can see, as we go through these requests, the requests far exceed the amount that's available to allocate to the public safety departments out of OLOST. The next was MCP. Their 2 capital requests that they had on their list was a freezer cooler replacement and also to do some road paving out at their facility. The item recommended was the freezer cooler replacement. For the marshal's office was equipment, generic listing for $10,000, ammunition for $10,000, and the license plate reader renewal at $2,200, and that's the item that was recommended for approval. And then on the sheriff's request was $1,742,000, and you can see from the attachment their request. Under their ranking, they listed everything as number 1. So their list was not prioritized, and so we recommended $416,850. The items that we looked at as the highest priority based on the information that we have, since it wasn't prioritized, was looking at those items at the jail to include the kitchen floor and equipment at $218,000, the inmate video visitation at $80,000, and the jail video visitation. That's where the total of the $416,850 comes from. So just to, we look at the amount that's available after all other obligations are appropriated to determine what's available for capital. We go through the requests that were submitted and try to prioritize the recommended capital based on the request from the department or the office. And as Ms. Alexander has stated, council has the option to reallocate any of that recommended capital between the organizations. The revenue is down about $1.3 million for OLOS, so it did restrict the amount that's available for capital to appropriate to public safety. And we'll come back with the report that shows you the vehicles from police, fire, marshal, sheriff that need to be replaced. We just don't have the funding to do that.
Thank you. Councilor Garrett.
I want to make an add to the marshal's budget. Do I have to make a motion for that? This is my
No,
first
you
time.
just requested it get
Okay.
placed on the ad list.
Okay, for the ad list, and I mean, I know it's not going to be everything you want either, but we're in frugal times with the budget right now, and I want to get some vehicles replaced. I'd request we add 2 Chargers with the pursuit package, so that's, if it's the same as the police numbers, it'd be $25,545, and then the build-out's $27,649. because it looks like there's the two vehicles that are the oldest with the highest mileage are those two Crown Vics. And then there's a 2004 Chevy Impala administrative vehicle, and that's a cheaper vehicle because it doesn't have the build-out that we could replace. That's $21,227. And then I've met with the marshal. They do have a serious issue when people are out on vacation and when somebody calls out sick. I know we can't add personnel everybody wants, but I would request we add one G14 deputy, but so they at least have somebody to cover for them. And, you know, hopefully if times are better, we can do more. But, you know, anything we can do to get more law enforcement on the street is a positive change.
Okay. Ms. Alexander, you've got that? Turn the microphone on.
Okay, so that's 2 pursuit vehicles with the technology packages and 1 G14 deputy marshal position.
And one admin vehicle.
And 1 admin vehicle. I'm sorry, I knew I missed something.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I know once before, we had a presentation from the marshal's office that showed the amount of funds they brought in on ticket issues that were issued. If we can get that as to the number of tickets or the amount that was brought in by the marshal's department for the past 12 months, or the past fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Huff.
Speaking to the Mayor Pro Tem first, I think his ticket count when we get it back is going to be down because he was asked not to write tickets and to get back to his core mission. So I look forward to seeing what it looks like. But at this point, our Councilor Garrett has added everything back, the cars that we were speaking of. But at some point, what is procedure for the city in doing just what's right? If you have policy to say that cars are 100,000 miles plus, they are 7+ years old, at what point do we just exchange the car?
When there's funding available. And that's an issue with capital across the board throughout the city is funding for capital. We have the same issue in the general fund. We have the same issue out of OLOST. We've had the same issue out of integrated waste for garbage trucks. We've replaced 29, but there's still, you know, at a total of 71. So it's just a funding issue.
Yeah, I mean, I get that on fund. I've never seen public safety treated this way.
I have been last several years.
Not 100%.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is they have, every one of those vehicles on that list are older than 7 years old and have more than 100,000 miles. So Harvey Milner also recommends that they be turned in.
I know.
And so we just have to take a percentage of them.
Yeah, we had to go back and find a way to do the garbage trucks and just things of that nature. But what I'm saying is, this is year 3, I think he just stated, that he's asking for vehicles. At what point do we give him vehicles? I mean, it's public safety. Mm-hmm. And they're going out putting their lives at risk to do evictions and things of this nature. So at what point do we look at it and say, well, the marshal department needs 2 pursuit vehicles a little bit more than we need a new garbage truck?
Yeah, that's council's decision.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Counselor Thomas.
Anytime the issue of the OLOS comes up, you know that I'm going to be in the conversation. And I'm going to be in the conversation because I was one of the people who put that program together. And the main part of that program was that 70%, excuse me, of the $33 million plus that we're collecting, we anticipate to collect, would go to public safety. And 30% of that would go to roads and infrastructure. And of that 70% that goes to public safety, there were certain personnel issues that were to be addressed. There were numbers assigned to the police department, the sheriff's department, the marshal's department, the Muskogee County Prison, and everybody else. And those were to be funded, the salary and all cost of those employees. And then whatever was left over in that 70% was to be used for public safety. And we have arbitrarily decided that of whatever is left over from that, this number of dollars is going over here and this number of dollars is going over here. And what we have done is we have said the capital project money is this amount of money, and we've got more stuff over here that we're paying out of that OLOS. There's nothing, there was nothing in the OLOS presentations to the public, because I made them. There was nothing that said we can't change that around. And when it comes to us and says, when any department of any public safety department comes to us and says to us, if I don't have the proper equipment for the people who are doing the job in my department, we are facing a safety issue. And I think that's what the marshal is saying to us. And so whatever it takes to rearrange the money that's left over after we handle the personnel, then that's what we have to do. Because we can't put our people on the street in unsafe vehicles. We can't do that. Even if it means telling the Crime Prevention Bureau, you only get $100,000 for grants this year, because we have a bigger issue over here. If I could, I'd give the marshal 8 vehicles, I'd give the fire department all of the fire trucks they want, I'd give everybody whatever they want. I can't do that. But I can make some decisions so that our employees are not put in jeopardy. And we've got to do that.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilor Woodson.
And Mr. Chairman, you know, what you have before you is the proposed method of spending $1,075,000. We are guided by your direction, and we are ready and willing, at your word, to move that money any way you want it moved. And you're the legislative body. It's all in your hands. If you want to take crime prevention money and do something different with it, you're the boss. All you got to do is say the word, and we're ready to move. So we are guided by your direction. Just know that.
Thank you. Councilor Woodson.
Yes. I want to ask the deputy city manager. We're getting more and more of these problems where our employees' vehicles are not safe, and we're having these issues. I'm not an accountant, so I don't know. But I'm just thinking, couldn't there be like a line item set aside that the interest that the money is being received from the loss, or a percentage of the tickets be placed in a line item for vehicle replacement? Just like we do the sales tax for a hotel, motel, how the state does, it says one penny or 1% goes to this or goes to that. Is that something that you can go back and consider? Because it's true, you know, our public safety, our public works, they're out there serving the community and they are in danger. And yes, we're in a budget cut, but sometimes we have to look out of the box like we do in our own financial budget. So I would ask if you can research that. I don't expect an answer today, but I would think that there will be a way of doing that, where you can take the interest of the loss, or you can take a percentage of the tickets that are being written, of the fines that are being in the courts, a percentage of that to go into a line item for vehicle replacements. I would like to see that, because I tend to agree with my colleagues, and I know that I will be supporting some of these outcomes, but we don't need to just react, we need to be proactive, and that's what I'm asking, to please be proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. And just kind of look at this, we're just starting this off like the Budget Chair just talked a little while ago. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of departments that are coming up here, and everybody's going to, somewhat lack of a better term, be lobbying for each department, and rightfully so, and certainly we can all make the arguments that there's going to be needed funds. But the truth of the matter is the facts. The facts in this are that we've got a budget that's been put before us that's been put right up to the 60-day mark, and you've got very limited cushion right at $400,000 or just a little bit over $400,000 to work with. Okay, that's the facts. The other fact is that sales tax revenue has come in lower. We're not bringing in what we used to bring in. The other fact along with that is that the lost every day, every year becomes more labor intensified, that we have to come up with more money. More money is being used to handle the labor cost, and that is true. That's just a fact. And there's less and less money to deal with capital replacement. Somehow that's going to have to be addressed in the future, whether this council's here or another council's here, that's going to have to be addressed. And I don't think the lost was ever intended to be so labor intensified that it has to be supported from that standpoint. And it carries every year. The longer employee stays with us, the more money's having to be paid out every year. Any new requests that come in, more money's being paid out. That's less for capital replacement. That's a fact. That's just mathematics. Now, really, you've got $400,000, what I hear, to play with, and we've just and that's not even, again, that's not even a cushion. And we've just started this thing, and today we've already used up what, Mr. Budget Chair, about 250 of it? There's about 250 going on the ad. So I think the city manager and others are right. Either we got to find somewhere else, take it from some other department, another public safety agency, but they're going to get territorial too, and they're going to make their case. But if you don't do that, then you've got that little cushion. That's all we got to make decisions, barring that there's no emergency needs that come in, emergency funding, and there's probably going to be some departments going to have emergency requests. So, I just want to remind everybody of that, is that's kind of where we're beginning here. We're beginning less than we had last year. Less in bringing in and less in the reserve. And Mayor, if I'm misstating this, please correct me. But that's, we got to keep that in consideration. So I'm listening to every request that's coming in, all the needs, but we got to, the old saying, we're put in a position that we got to do more with less. And, everybody's going to want some expediting time or needs here and there, but, we're not going to be able to cover that.
That's correct.
And the funding's not there to cover that. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And we're drawing to a close more by necessity than by design. We've got about 10 minutes left, but the Mayor Pro Tem has the floor.
And I agree with you.
Can't hear you.
Voice not on? What dummy didn't turn? Oh, that was me.
I agree, we have to look at it as a whole, but by the same token, we set aside money each year for hiring additional police officers that we don't hire. Now, if we need cars, that's a one-time expenditure. If we need cars, we need cars. It's not like somebody's making this stuff up that we need pursuit cars. So I think this year, we may not set aside as much as we have in the past for hiring police officers, because we need to get these cars on the road that we don't put people's lives in danger.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, and I guess anything else? We've got just a few moments. Well, Marshall, please understand that I think I speak for everybody up here when I say you've got the respect of this council for the job that you do and the job that your deputies do. We've been on the opposite sides in the budget session and even in courtrooms.
Yes,
But we still respect what your folks do out there, and we want to make sure they have an opportunity to return home without any worries. However, I will say this, I'll read the tea leaves a little bit here, and I can almost promise you that everybody that comes before us and all the public safety heads are going to say their needs are absolutely critical, and they are going to create situations where there are safety issues if they don't get them. So we're going to hear this again. Doesn't minimize the need, the significance of what you're requesting, and I hope you understand it doesn't diminish our desire to try to provide it. It's simply a cold, hard fact. The mayor and, as the city manager pointed out, they've done their job. They've presented a recommended budget, and now it's up to this group. And this group is, I respect all these folks, and they'll do the right thing. It ain't going to make everybody happy, but I promise you, whatever we do, we'll do for the right reasons.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. If I can also mention too that, if I could also mention too that, for the record, that we did add the 8 vehicles onto the budget. We use the same form that we normally use, so I just want to let the viewing audience know that, so that if I happen to leave here and if they say that you didn't ask for vehicles, we did ask for vehicles. It was
Yes, sir.
discussed, so thank you so much.
Duly noted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, Angelica, or Miss Alexander, I'm sorry.
Well, just comment on you have the capital outlay request that Deputy City Manager Hodge provided that shows the rank request. There was no vehicles requested from the marshal's office, although they did turn in the capital outlay form that shows what vehicles they would be turning in had they requested vehicles. And so I'd like to maybe get together with the marshal's office just to make sure that they understand how to make those requests in the budget. I did go back to FY12, and I saw where they did make requests on the capital outlay form and then also turned in the vehicle turn-in sheet as a part of their budget request for FY12.
I'm certain the marshal would welcome that input if it helps make the process smoother. But I
Right.
think at this juncture, what we really want to see is the number of vehicles that are over the recommended
Yes.
life, and make it so that we can easily quantify the public safety vehicles
Yes.
as well.
And I'll have that next Tuesday.
And in it would also be interesting, as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, to see reflected in there somewhere a percentage of increase in maintenance due to the aging fleet. I'm certain there's going to be some corresponding increase in maintenance. We dealt with that when I know Councilor Huff mentioned the garbage trucks, and that was certainly a consideration. It offset some of the costs of providing them. All right, any other questions or comments from the committee? Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.